Chapter 1. Continent of Astral Souls. Yenwu Empire. Central Plains, Phoenix City. Clearwater District. Fengwu Home District. Doggy. There was a clear voice. Sui Xiaoduo, who was in a daze as he recalled the dream, slowly regained his focus. He then gloomily covered his head with the blanket. Doggy. The voice came again. It was long and cheerful, proving that the owner of the voice was very happy at the moment. However, Sui Xiaoduo was very unhappy. Because the name, Doggy, was for him. No one would be happy to be called, Doggy. However, Sui Xiaoduo couldn't be angry right now. He didn't dare to be angry. He didn't know how many names he had already had. Yes, that's right. The person who was calling him was his mother. Would he dare to be angry? There was only helplessness. From his mother and father, ever since Sui Xiaoduo could remember, his name was as numerous as the sand in the vast Yangtze River and the stars in the endless Milky Way. Moreover, his name depended on his parents' moods. When they were in a good mood, they would call him Doggy, Doggy, Kitty, Mimi, Little Egg, Little Darling, Little Darling. Whatever came to mind. When they were in a bad mood, they would call him Xiaoduo in a very serious manner. When they were in a bad mood, especially when he provoked them, they would call him Little Bastard, Little Bastard, Little Bastard, Little Coward, Little Red Guy, Little Debt Collector, Little Heartless. There was even more. Moreover, they would call him in different dialects. Sui Xiaoduo sometimes found it strange. His parents were so knowledgeable. They knew all the dialects from the south to the north, from the east to the west, and they used them to scold him. The way he addressed his parents was a barometer of his guess about their mood. For example, calling him Doggy meant that his mother was in a good mood. Since she was in a good mood, she wouldn't get angry easily. Therefore, it didn't matter if he didn't agree to it. That I have to guess if I'm going to get beaten up by the name I'm being called. It's too difficult. Sui Xiaoduo lay on the bed and sighed silently. Calling him Dogda 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 was still acceptable. The problem was that Sui Xiaoduo was also extremely dissatisfied with his current name. Xiaoduo. Listen, what kind of name is that? Not domineering at all. For example, there was a classmate named Xiao Jianghu. How heroic. There's also someone called Li Chang Tian. Just hearing him sounds awesome. But his own name. Furthermore, that day. His dad drank a little too much and was in a good mood. Hence, Sui Xiaoduo boldly asked, "Why is my name Xiaoduo? Can't you give me a better name?" At that time, his father had looked at him from the corner of his eyes with a look of disdain. He had said resolutely, "No." Why? No reason. I can't change my name. Then why is he called Xiaoduo? Can you tell me? At that time, his father snorted and rolled his eyes. He said indifferently, "Because your birth is a little Xiao to your mother and me." Xiao's extra equals Xiaoduo. Sui Xiaoduo felt that his heart was like the string of ellipses above. Could it be that the two of you think that my birth ruined your two-person world? Am I that unnecessary? Which family wouldn't be overjoyed to have a bloodline inheritance? Especially when I'm the leader. Why is it unnecessary when it comes to you two? At that time, Sui Xiaoduo asked tearfully, "Do you dislike me so much?" His father took a sip of wine and said slowly, "Well, there's a need to mention here. Xiaoduo's father was very gentle, elegant, and handsome. He looked like a handsome man in a chaotic world. Other than being a little lazy, he didn't have any flaws." His father said slowly, "At first, I didn't like it. Later, your mother realized that after having you, she actually had a fun toy. She realized that having a child is quite fun, so she played with him. Slowly, she didn't dislike him that much." Toy. Hearing these two words, Sui Xiaoduo received a critical blow and immediately shut himself up. "You two gave birth to a toy." His mother said eloquently, "Isn't having a child for fun?" Just like your Auntie Lee's cat or your Auntie Wang's dog. No matter what it is, you have to have a toy, right? What you said makes sense. I was speechless. The conversation that night ended here. Zhuo Xiaoduo felt that he had no interest in asking anything else. He went back to his room with a wounded heart. Zhuo Xiaoduo felt that it was all thanks to his big heart. He felt that he might be too open-minded. He actually didn't take such a serious blow to heart and still heartlessly endured it. And the most miraculous thing was that after that night, he actually felt relieved. No, to be exact, before that night was over, he felt relieved. Sigh, I'm just a toy. A toy, so be it. In this world, who isn't someone's toy? But, can't I change my name? Damn it! A roar came from the door. His mother pushed the door open angrily. Didn't you hear me? Are you deaf? Zhuo Xiaoduo bounced up from the bed with a duong and said with a flattering face, I heard you, I heard you. I was just about to go help you with your work. I'm coming. At the door, there was a beautiful woman who looked like she was only 27 or 28 years old. She was Zhuo Xiaoduo's mother. His biological mother. When most people saw Zhuo Xiaoduo's mother for the first time, it was inevitable that they would admire her and let their imagination run wild. The beautiful woman in front of them looked so gentle and virtuous. She must be a good wife and mother with a good temper and outstanding talent. But only Zhuo Xiaoduo knew that this gentle and virtuous wife and mother in the eyes of others was terrible and horrible to her biological son. Zhuo Xiaoduo had lived in the shadow of his mother for 17 years. Now, it had developed to the point where he would stand at attention reflexively when he heard his mother's roar. As long as that gentle and virtuous beautiful face was serious, Zhuo Xiaoduo would feel his buttocks twitching, because it was accompanied by a delicious meal of bamboo shoots fried with meat. She would not show any mercy to him. In an ordinary family, it was basically a strict father and a loving mother. But in Zhuo Xiaoduo's family, it was the opposite, a strict mother and a loving father. A loving father. In fact, it was not very kind, or it was more appropriate to say that he was indifferent and heartless. But a strict mother was really strict. In fact, Zhuo Xiaoduo couldn't figure it out. So many years had passed, but there was no trace left on his mother's face. She was still so young and beautiful. Of course, his father was the same. He looked 26 or 27 years old, but he was definitely not more than 30 years old. He was handsome and elegant, and people would have a good impression of him at first sight. They would think that he was a learned person like a scholar. But in fact, he. Help me with work. His mother's face was full of doubt. Son of a bitch, when did you become so filial? Zhuo Xiaoduo jumped up and massaged his mother's shoulders attentively. Oh, mother is so tired every day. I can't bear to see it. Let me give you a massage. Wu Yuding squinted and enjoyed her son's massage. She said comfortably, you want money? No. Let me tell you, Zhuo Xiaoduo, your pocket money for this month has been spent in advance. If you want to take money from me, you'd better give up. Zhuo Xiaoduo immediately stopped and said with a sobbing tone, you are really my biological mother. You are too cruel. I haven't even said anything. Wu Yuding rolled her eyes and felt like a young girl. She curled her lips and said, you came out of my belly. How can I not know what you are thinking? Zhuo Xiaoduo was dejected. Don't even think about asking your father for money. Zhuo Xiaoduo was grief-stricken. Don't even think about asking your sister Nian for money. I will remind them. Who dares to give you money? Try it. This is the first time I have heard of asking for money for a dream. Zhuo Xiaoduo, your reason is also strange. Zhuo Xiaoduo was completely disheartened. He felt that there was nothing left to live for in this world. He begged, Mother. I have something important to do. I really have something important to do. Wu Yuding snorted disdainfully, as a 17-year-old who is still a martial disciple, and a primary martial disciple at that. Moreover, a primary martial disciple who has been a primary martial disciple for 5 years. Moreover, a primary martial disciple who can sleep 14 hours a day for 5 years. What kind of business can he have? Zhuo Xiaoduo covered his heart with tears in his eyes. Mother, I feel like my heart has been hurt. You still have a heart? Wu Yuding snorted and turned away. Hurry up and help me pick the vegetables. Your father and sister Nian will be back soon. Your father will take a nap after eating, and sister Nian will meditate and prepare to break through the yin-yang realm. You can't not rest well at this juncture. Hurry up, if you dawdle again, I will break your legs. Mother snorted, too. Zhuo Xiaoduo kept quiet out of fear, and hurriedly followed with his tail between his legs. Mother, you leave them all, I will do it all. While picking the vegetables, Zhuo Xiaoduo sighed and rolled his eyes. Is there any way to cheat some money from my mother? No, coax some money out of her. I don't need a lot, just 3,000, no, 2,000 is fine, or even 1,500. Is fine. That way, he would be able to test whether or not this strange dream of his was real. Did that world really exist? Is this really a dream? Have I really been a scammer in that world for so many years? A fortune teller? Money. You're the eternal resentment in my heart. Noon. The living room was filled with the aroma of food. The door creaked, and a voice said, "Smells good. Looks like I have to drink something today." Then, a middle-aged man in his 30s walked in. He was tall, with sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes. He was handsome and confident, and his hair was as black as ink. His fitted clothes made his figure look even more elegant. He wore shiny black leather shoes, and his face was calm and gentle. It was Zhuo Xiaoduo's father, Zhuo Changlu. He was known as the Zhuo Changlu who had a long road under his feet. Is Nian not back yet? Zhuo Changlu asked as a matter of routine. In fact, he knew that his daughter would come back 15 minutes later than him every day. Everyone's sense of time was very accurate, and there was basically no mistake. If she missed this time, she would not come back for dinner. Then, he sat down at the dining table and said with a smile, I found that thing for Nian. Wu Yuding walked out, wiping her hands, and said in surprise, You found it. How much did you spend? Just a little. Zhuo Changlu smiled, Don't worry about it. Zhuo Xiaoduo's eyes lit up like a light bulb. Money? Oh. Wu Yuding smiled gently, Okay, I'll be so happy when Nian comes back. Zhuo Xiaoduo was in the kitchen pouring soup. He listened carefully and pouted, You bought a gift for my sister again, but there's nothing for me. If there is something for me, I'll convert it into money. What are you happy about? A quiet voice came quietly. There was a soft sound at the door, as if someone was changing into slippers. Then, a girl in a blue dress walked in. Her slender and delicate figure was about 1.7 meters tall. She was slightly on the thin side, but her figure was slender. Her long hair was soft and smooth, and her face was tranquil. Her pair of beautiful eyes were like 2 small, limpid pools. Her entire person was like a pure lotus flower, untainted by the mortal world. Anyone who saw this girl would have the same feeling, this girl is so clean and pure. Then, they would be filled with amazement. This girl seemed to have a natural temperament that made people who saw her calm down involuntarily. In the face of such a beauty, they could not even think of blasphemy. They could only admire her. It was Zhuo Xiaoduo's sister, Zhuo Xiaonian. Daddy came back a long time ago. Zhuo Xiaonian's quiet face warmed up. She looked around and asked, Doggy is not home? Zhuo Xiaoduo roared angrily in the kitchen, Don't call me doggy. Zhuo Xiaonian chuckled. This chuckle added a little girlish charm to her. She suddenly became lively. She rolled her eyes and said, What can you do if I call you doggy? Doggy. Doggy. Ha! Zhuo Xiaoduo rushed out with a ladle, but Wu Yuding twisted his ear. Are you rebelling? Ouch, ouch, ouch. Zhuo Xiaoduo tilted his head, his face twisted. Mom! Your favoritism is too obvious, isn't it? I am your son too. Your biological son. Zhuo Xiaoduo could never understand his mother's ear-twisting skill. How did his mother practice it? No matter how fast he was, as long as she wanted to twist his ear when he passed by her, she would never miss. She could twist his ear with a stretch of her hand, and she could even twist it. Biased? I'm afraid you have some misunderstanding about bias. Wu Yuding snorted coldly. Was this not considered biased? Zhuo Xiaoduo tilted his head and saw Zhuo Xiaonian twisting his ear, then making a face at him. This kind of girlish gesture could only be seen in her own home. Outsiders would never see it. During the meal, Zhuo Xiaoduo finally understood what it meant to be biased. Xiao Nian, Zhuo Changlu said calmly as he ate, how confident are you in breaking through the yin-yang realm this time? Zhuo Xiaonian subconsciously straightened her body and said respectfully, it should be fine. I will break through in the Martial Arts Academy's astral power room. I have enough astral power. I have also prepared a lot of elixirs and a few star beast cores. Also, the place is heavily guarded. The instructors of the Martial Arts Academy are responsible for guarding it. My master and a few others are also guarding it. Nothing will happen. Zhuo Changlu nodded and said, as long as you know what you are doing. As he spoke, he took out a small, exquisite box from his pocket and put it on the table. He pushed it forward and said, take it. If you can use it, don't be stingy. If you don't need it, keep it for yourself. Zhuo Xiaonian nodded and opened the box. Suddenly, she exclaimed and covered her mouth. Her eyes were filled with disbelief and shock. Life Origin Pill. Father, this. She was so shocked that she couldn't speak. Zhuo Xiaoduo was also shocked. His eyes lit up as he looked at the box. There was a pill in the box. One side of it was pure black, emitting a faint light. The other side was pure white, emitting a lustrous white light. The pill was placed in the box, motionless. However, the black and white colors seemed to be circulating naturally, constantly rotating. It was the holy medicine for warriors, the Life Origin Pill. Warriors under the Dan Origin stage could instantly replenish all their Life Origin Qi after taking one pill. Therefore, there was a saying that, one pill is one life. It was perfect for Zhuo Xiaonian to use in his attempt to break through the yin-yang realm. Normally, when a martial artist tried to break through the yin-yang realm, they would be exhausted. With this pill, it was equivalent to having an extra life. Zhuo Changlu smiled faintly. Take it. This. Zhuo Xiaonian's face gradually calmed down. She held the box in her hand and asked softly, this Life Origin Pill is worth 1 million. Father, where did you get so much money? Besides, this thing, even if you have money, there is no market for it. The black market has already reached 5 million. A lot of people are waiting for it. How did you get it? If the price is too high, we don't want it. 1 million. Zhuo Xiaoduo was shocked. 1 million star origin coins. It was enough for a family to live comfortably for the rest of their lives. Old master. Spent it just like that? Zhuo Xiaonian's beautiful face showed a trace of anxiety. I am really confident. I don't need this. Zhuo Changlu said decisively, I told you to take it, so take it. What are you talking about? Is the family's money something you should worry about? His voice was very strict. Zhuo Xiaonian's eyes reddened. Her slender fingers held the Life Origin Pill, faintly trembling. After a long time, she said softly, yes. I was wrong. Zhuo Changlu's voice softened. That's right. Little Nian, you have a great future ahead of you. After the yin-yang realm, you will enter the origin core realm, and then the other realms. Your mother and I can't help you much, but you are my daughter. We will help you as much as we can. When there is nothing else we can do, you can leave by yourself. Before that, don't worry too much. Do you understand? Zhuo Xiaonian was silent for a moment and said, Father, if I can successfully break through to the Dan origin stage this time, I will be satisfied. I don't want to go any further. This road is really tiring. I feel that I can't stand it. After this breakthrough, I will wait until Xiao Duo is 20 years old. I want to marry Xiao Duo at that time. Zhuo Xiaoduo's eyes widened in shock. Then, she heard her parents coldly shout at the same time, nonsense. Shut up. Zhuo Xiaonian was about to cry. Father. Zhuo Changlu's indifferent expression completely disappeared. He put down his chopsticks, sat up straight, and said solemnly, You, Zhuo Xiaonian, are my daughter. Although you are not my biological daughter, your mother and I have raised you since you were an infant. You are no different from our biological daughter. You are our daughter. Not our family's child bride. When you were 8 or 9 years old, your mother said nonsense. She said it would be great if you could marry Xiao Duo and the family would never be separated. That was just a joke. I didn't expect you to remember it until now. But... Zhuo Zhanglu spoke slowly, but his tone was unquestionable. If you dare to say that again, I will break your legs. Chapter 2. But... Zhuo Xiaonian's eyes were filled with tears. I'm really tired. This road is too difficult. Zhuo Zhanglu looked at her and said, Xiaonian, look into my eyes and tell me, are you really tired? Is this path really that difficult for you? Zhuo Xiaonian's eyes were red. She turned her head to the side and bit her lip. Why do you have to chase me out? Isn't it good for us to be together as a family? I know you can't bear to part with me, but I can't bear to part with you even more. Her tears finally fell drop by drop. Zhuo Changlu was expressionless. Zhuo Xiaonian, you told me you're tired and can't take it. Hee, you're 19 this year. You awakened your astral souls at the age of 3, built your martial arts foundation at the age of 6, became a martial arts disciple at the age of 7, a martial arts master at the age of 9, and entered the innate realm at the age of 11. You completed the thorny road at the age of 13 and entered the embryonic breathing realm. You crossed the boundary between immortals and mortals at the age of 16, and you're about to cross the yin-yang path and enter the inner elixir realm at the age of 19. Your aptitude is not only the best in Phoenix City, but also the best in the Central Plains. Even in the entire Yanwu country, you're definitely one of the top 3 geniuses. You said you're tired and can't take it. How can others live? What Zhuo Changlu said was completely true. Zhuo Xiaonian's aptitude had been proven long ago. Opening all the 100 meridians of the Xiantian realm. Such talent was rarely seen in the world. The title of Phoenix City's #1 genius girl was firmly on her head when she leaped into the innate realm at the age of 11, and no one could shake it. Zhuo Xiaonian was the pride of Phoenix City where she lived. She was also second to none in the Central Plains. If it weren't for the fact that this girl was really homesick and unwilling to leave, she would have been taken to various sects to practice in secret places. You've almost never encountered any bottlenecks along the way, and you're telling me you're tired? Zhuo Changlu snorted and said coldly, Zhuo Xiaonian, put away your ridiculous idea of repaying a debt of gratitude. Although your mother and I are ordinary people with mediocre qualifications, we would never do such a despicable thing as using family affection to keep a genius girl as our daughter-in-law. If you still acknowledge us as your parents, then continue to move forward and carve out your own life for us. If you don't recognize us as your parents, then leave. Now that your wings have hardened, you are an inner core expert, a grandmaster of your generation. You can go anywhere in the world. We'll pretend that we never raised you. It's not like my son can't find a wife. He doesn't need your pity. Wow. Zhuo Xiaonian burst into tears and threw herself into Wu Yuding's arms. She sobbed and trembled. Mom. Dad scolded me. Wu Yuding hugged her daughter and looked at Zhuo Changlu reproachfully. It's okay if you don't like it. Why are you so fierce? Can't you say nice things nicely? That's what I don't like about you. Once you lose your temper, you're not you anymore. Zhuo Changlu snorted and was still angry. Then tell me, is this girl asking for a scolding? Then he turned to Zhuo Xiaoduo. Did you hear that? Zhuo Xiaoduo shrunk his shoulders and lowered his head, laughing secretly. When he saw his sister being scolded, he couldn't help but gloat. What's more, when his father said, "Our aptitudes aren't that great," Zhuo Xiaoduo was amused. Just as he was chuckling to himself, he was suddenly yelled at. He immediately raised his head, blinked his eyes, and said, "Ah." What ah? Let me tell you, your sister will not be on the same path as you in the future. Don't be delusional. Zhuo Changlu said sternly, if I find out that you have any thoughts that you shouldn't have, I'll beat you to death. I can't beat your sister now, but I can beat a martial disciple like you. Zhuo Xiaoduo shuddered. He shrunk his neck and said carefully, I wouldn't dare. He thought, this violent woman is only gentle in front of you and outsiders. I've been beaten by her for more than 10 years. Isn't that enough? If I become her wife and can't beat her, won't I be beaten for life? I've known about this since I was 6 years old. But when I was 6 years old, I rejected her after she beat me 40 to 50 times. I won't ask for trouble. Zhuo Xiaonian hugged Zhuo Changlu's arm and said coquettishly, Dad, I was wrong. But, you have to say these words in front of Doggy. It'll make him sad. She looked at Zhuo Xiaoduo with pity. Zhuo Xiaoduo raised his eyebrows and roared, Don't call me Doggy. Zhuo Xiaonian smiled through her tears and made a face at him. Zhuo Changlu sighed and said, Xiaoduo's talent is average. He has no hope in martial arts. In this world where the strong are respected, he's destined to not go far. It's better to live an ordinary life. Xiao Nian has a bright future. He's destined to be a person from 2 different worlds. If we don't make it clear now, no matter who has other thoughts, it will inevitably cause regret. Who will benefit? Wu Yuding also sighed softly. She hugged her daughter in her arms and said softly, Xiao Nian, I know what you're thinking. But your dad is right. You have to listen to him. You said that your dad and I treat you like our own. We can't bear to ruin your future. Also, you have to understand that with your current achievements, if you really stay, it will only hurt your brother. If you really stay and marry him, I'm afraid he won't live for more than a few days. Zhuo Xiaonian was frightened when she heard that. She suddenly straightened up from her mother's arms. Her face darkened and she fell silent. A pair of beautiful eyebrows slowly knitted together. There was a flash of fierceness. After that, the family stopped talking and ate in silence. Zhuo Xiaoduo thought for a long time, but he didn't pay any attention to love. His focus was the 1 million yuan. After a while, he finally gathered his courage and said, Dad, you spent 1 million yuan to buy the elixirs for my sister? Zhuo Changlu had also calmed down. He said lightly, Why? Do you have a problem with that? Zhuo Xiaoduo said with a face full of saliva, Dad, my dear Dad, it's reasonable that you buy the elixirs for my sister. There's nothing more suitable than that. But I'm also your son. It's reasonable for me to covet the elixirs. I certainly wouldn't dare to ask for so much. How about 10,000 yuan? Zhuo Changlu frowned and slowly turned his head to look at him. How about 8,000? 5,000, 5,000 is fine too. Zhuo Xiaoduo raised his hand weakly. Seeing that the old man was about to glare at him, he hurriedly changed his words, Dad, hee. 3,000, 3,000 it is. Is it still that strange dream of yours? I don't have a single cent now. Zhuo Changlu slowly picked up a piece of meat and put it in his mouth. He chewed with relish. I'll show you the way. Ask your mom for it. Zhuo Xiaoduo cried, if my mom gave me the elixirs, I wouldn't need to ask you. You're too unfair. Give my sister 1,000,000 yuan. Well, I won't give it to you. What are you going to do about it? Zhuo Chenglu answered casually. My position in the family. Zhuo Xiaoduo sighed. So you still want to have a position in this family? Wu Yuding smiled and glanced at her son. Tell me, what position do you want? You're still not satisfied with being the fourth in command? Why don't I raise someone else and you can be the fifth in command, Ha ha ha. Zhuo Xiaonian couldn't help but laugh, rocking back and forth. Image. Girl, image. Lady, lady. Wu Yuding glared at her. Zhuo Xiaonian stuck out her tongue and lowered her head to eat. She became obedient. Zhuo Xiaoduo sighed and didn't say anything. He was thinking, where can I get some money in the afternoon? Although he was a teenager, he spent his whole life in the dream world. Although he died early in that life and didn't even know whether the experience in the dream world was real or not, his state of mind was incomparable to that of an ordinary 17-year-old teenager. He started to dream when he was 11 and had the same dream continuously for 6 years. For 6 years, it hindered his cultivation, delayed his martial arts, and made him sleepy every day. Otherwise, no matter how bad his aptitude was, he wouldn't be like this now. The last scene of the dream, the huge explosion of the entire starry sky, seemed to be roaring in his mind. Countless stars exploded in an instant, and a dazzling light rushed towards him. Then, he woke up from the dream. Ever since the dream, the broken jade pendant that had suddenly appeared on his chest was a clear indication that all of this was definitely not just a dream. Now, he only needed to buy the things he needed to test whether his adventure was real or not. Was it an illusion? But how could he get money? After so many years of being stingy, the pocket money he saved up was not enough. Since his parents knew that he was spending money to test the dream world, they didn't give him any more money. Giving him a few thousand for a dream? He was thinking too much. After dinner, Zhuo Xiaonian went back to her room. Before she left, she winked at Zhuo Xiaoduo. Zhuo Chenglu also went back to the shop. I'll go buy some goods in the afternoon. There are no more astral souls stones. This time, I have to buy some high-quality ones to make up for the deficit. The father and daughter both left. Wu Yuding sighed and looked at Zhuo Xiaoduo. Xiaoduo, don't be disappointed. This is a world of martial arts. Your aptitude and your sister Nian are destined to be in two different worlds. I understand. I really understand, Zhuo Xiaoduo said calmly. When his mother called Xiaoduo, even if it was a serious conversation, Zhuo Xiaoduo didn't dare to be playful. In fact, after living a homeless life in the dream world, Zhuo Xiaoduo was satisfied with his current family. He was so satisfied that he couldn't be more satisfied. She couldn't wait to spend her life peacefully and peacefully. What could be more important than family happiness, peace, and joy? He was willing to guard this peace and warmth forever and live like this. Of course, on this foundation, it would be better if he could have great power. However, he still thought to himself, I knew this was my wife when I was 6. Now that I'm 17, you told me not to think about it and told me not to be disappointed. You really are my mother. Fortunately, I didn't plan to do this in the first place. Humph, Wu Yuding sighed deeply. She looked at her son lovingly. She felt that her son had a tough life. In the Astral Souls continent, martial arts were respected. The continent had gone through several eras, from the primeval era to the immortal era, to the emperor era, and then to the final martial era. Then, it went to the technological era, the Starfall era, the Doomsday era, the Recovery era, and finally to the Star Warrior era. It wasn't easy for ordinary people to survive in this world. In any era in the Astral Souls continent, there was one thing that was the same: ordinary people with no aptitude or poor aptitude always made up the majority. And his son was one of these millions of ordinary people. In this life, in this era of martial arts, it was destined that it would be difficult for him to make a name for himself. Zhou Xiaonian's astral souls awakened when she was 3 years old. The astral souls soared into the sky and filled the sky. From head to toe, her star veins were as dense as an inescapable net, almost condensing into a whole body. It was the extremely rare body of the 99 astral souls. She was only one step away from the complete body of the innate astral souls. As for her son, Zhou Xiaoduo, he only awakened his astral souls at the age of 8. The astral souls in his dantian were just a weak little flame, weak and powerless. It was better not to have them at all. If he didn't have them at all, he wouldn't have any hope of becoming an expert in his life and would just be an ordinary person with peace of mind. However, with the astral souls in his body, it meant that he could become a martial artist. And to become a martial artist, he would have to bear the responsibilities of a martial artist. The responsibilities of a martial artist were equivalent to life and death. Above martial disciple was martial warrior, above martial warrior was martial master, above martial master was innate, above innate was embryonic breathing, above embryonic breathing was inner core. The inner core realm could already be called grandmaster. As for the higher realms, there was no need to talk about them. However, Zhou Xiaonian was about to break through to the inner core realm. With her son's aptitude, he probably wouldn't be able to climb up even after 300 years. Right? Walking the martial arts. It's really impossible for you. Wu Yuding looked at her son and sighed. Xiao Duo, actually, being an ordinary person would be more stable. Zhou Xiaoduo squinted his eyes and laughed. Mother, even if I can't walk the normal path, it doesn't mean that I have to despair. I can still walk the unorthodox path. Wu Yuding snorted and glared at her son. What are you talking about? If you dare to walk the unorthodox path, not only will the law not tolerate it, but I will also not let you go. Believe it or not, I will beat you to a pulp. Zhou Xiaoduo shrunk his neck and kept quiet out of fear. He disagreed in his heart. In such a glorious era, how can I live a mediocre life? Mother, I just lack some money. Zhou Xiaoduo made one last effort. Get lost. I don't have it. Wu Yuding was fuming with anger. She had just spent 1 million on elixirs. Although she didn't know where her husband got it from, Wu Yuding knew that although her family was not bad, she still couldn't take out 1 million. Now that she had such a huge burden, her son was still so insensible and wanted to spend money recklessly. He wanted to spend a few thousand just to have a dream. How preposterous. He deserved to be beaten. Not to mention that she didn't have it. Even if she did, she wouldn't give it to him. She really couldn't understand. This kid was so young, but he had such a deep obsession and desire for money from a young age. After so many years of giving him pocket money and New Year's money, he didn't spend a single cent. He was a living example of a miser who was greedy for money to a certain extent. He really wasn't as open-minded as her husband. Not only was he greedy for money, but he was also shameless. Did I really give birth to this? Wu Yuding thought about Zhou Xiaoduo's character and sighed. She looked down at her stomach and couldn't understand. You didn't inherit any of your father's and my good character genes, but you didn't let go of any of our shortcomings and accepted them all. Wu Yuding also went out. Zhou Xiaoduo sighed and was about to go back to his room to think of a solution when his vision suddenly turned black. He only felt a familiar dizziness and couldn't see anything. His body was floating in the air and moving rapidly. Zhou Xiaoduo screamed and yelled, Zhou Xiaonian. Ever since Zhou Xiaonian had a breakthrough and gained the ability to control objects, she would capture Zhou Xiaoduo every day. As long as his parents weren't at home, Zhou Xiaoduo would often be captured and floated in the air. It was unbearable. Who would have such an elder sister? She still wants me to marry her. This was simply. Ha! Didn't they say that you should beat your younger brother early? Zhou Xiaoduo felt that Zhou Xiaonian didn't need to beat him early at all. Because she could keep hitting him. With a whoosh, his eyes lit up. He saw Zhuo Xiaonian's smiling face appear in front of him. She said proudly, "Does it feel good?" Zhuo Xiaoduo was still feeling dizzy. He stood on the ground and swayed back and forth. He gritted his teeth and said, "Just you wait. If my cultivation exceeds yours, surpass me. What do you want to do?" Zhuo Xiaonian took a step forward, puffed out her chest, and asked arrogantly. I don't want to do anything." Zhuo Xiaoduo shamefully cowered. Zhuo Xiaonian had already moved forward. She reached out and pinched Zhuo Xiaoduo's cheek. She asked fiercely, "Tell me, what do you want money for?" Ouch, ouch, ouch. Zhuo Xiaoduo couldn't resist Zhuo Xiaonian's grip. He sucked in cold air and said angrily, "Let go. I want money. Of course I need money." Zhuo Xiaonian moved closer to him and carefully observed him for a long time. They were so close that Zhuo Xiaoduo could even feel the temperature of Zhuo Xiaonian's breath and the sweetness in her mouth. He couldn't help but feel dizzy. He said angrily, "You told me not to think about it. Don't mess with me." "Humph. Who cares?" After a long time, Zhuo Xiaonian released him. She turned her hand and a red pill appeared. She snorted and said, "Eat this and I'll give you money." Sigh. "I told you it's useless." Zhuo Xiaoduo took it and threw it into his mouth without looking. It was a low-quality marrow cleansing pill. Ever since Zhuo Xiaonian made a name for herself, she was beautiful and talented. She had so many suitors that they could circle around Phoenix City 3 times. It was even more common for her to get all kinds of low-quality pills. However, everyone knew that Zhuo Xiaonian was only interested in pills that could improve the abilities of astral souls. She didn't care about anything else. Although they didn't know why, her suitors all catered to her interests. Especially pills like these, they were cheap. They didn't know that all the pills that Zhuo Xiaonian got were fed into Zhuo Xiaoduo's stomach. Zhuo Xiaoduo had eaten no less than 20 of these marrow cleansing pills. "Did you pick them up again this time?" Zhuo Xiaoduo asked as he swallowed. "Of course." Zhuo Xiaonian blinked and showed a playful expression. "Someone walked in front of me and dropped a bottle of pills. I couldn't call him back no matter how hard I tried. So I had to take them back." Zhuo Xiaoduo was speechless. "Sister, you're so lucky." Zhuo Xiaoduo rolled his eyes and said sarcastically, "Poor me. I haven't even picked up a coin since I was young. You can pick up anything. I'm impressed." Since she was 13 or 15 years old, Zhuo Xiaonian had picked up this kind of pill countless times. Astral Souls Pill, Star Transformation Pill, Spirit Awakening Pill, Marrow Cleansing Pill. They were all pills that laid the foundation, awakened the astral souls, strengthened the astral souls, and assisted the astral souls. Your suitors must have deliberately thrown them on the ground. Wouldn't you owe them a favor if you took them? Zhuo Xiaoduo sighed. What favor? Zhuo Xiaonian widened her eyes. I picked them up by luck. Zhuo Xiaoduo was speechless. If they didn't want to pursue you, why would they deliberately throw them in front of you and let you pick them up? Who doesn't know that you want them? She wrinkled her nose and snorted. They dared to throw them away, so I dared to pick them up. What does this have to do with pursuing me? Do you think that I should accept someone's pursuit just because I picked up his pills? What kind of ridiculous logic is this? Zhuo Xiaoduo looked at the beautiful woman whose face was as thick as a city wall and couldn't help but sigh in his heart. If her suitors knew that their goddess, who was perfect, gentle, and virtuous in their eyes, was so shameless, wouldn't their worldview be destroyed? Then why didn't you pick up the other pills? The other pills are more expensive. Why would I pick them up if they're useless to you? Zhuo Xiaonian said righteously. Zhuo Xiaoduo was speechless. You're beautiful, so you have the final say. I'm speechless, okay. After a long time, he felt that the medicinal power of the marrow cleansing pill had dissolved in his body. It only warmed up slightly and disappeared as usual. Zhuo Xiaoduo sighed. Don't pick them up anymore. I've eaten a whole car full of the pills you picked up these past few years. They're really useless. Don't. Before she could finish, Zhuo Xiaoyan sneered. Aya, you've really grown up. You're trying to control your sister now. Zhuo Xiaoduo was defeated instantly. He had no choice. His status in the family was too low, and his strength was too weak. No matter who it was, they could beat him. Especially Zhuo Xiaoyan. Now, Zhuo Xiaoyan could beat a master like him like a child. Last time, he annoyed her. She threw him 100 meters high and threw him 7 or 8 times. He was almost scared out of his wits. Violent woman. Chewing the pill given by Zhuo Xiaoyan in his mouth, Zhuo Xiaoduo felt a little complicated. Over the years, his parents had become more and more affectionate to him. They were more lenient towards Zhuo Xiaoyan. Regarding this, Zhuo Xiaoduo always said that they were biased, but he knew in his heart. In fact, his parents were biased towards him. As the book said, the most important thing for a family was to be comfortable and casual. The more casual they were with each other, the more family they were. There was a saying that said, good temper is given to outsiders, bad temper is given to family members. Why? It wasn't because he was dissatisfied with his family. It was because his family could really tolerate his bad temper. People had to vent their negative emotions, but who else could let him vent? Zhuo Xiaoyan had also been worried sick about him all these years. In order to let him cultivate and change his aptitude, Zhuo Xiaoyan had put in a lot of effort. Zhuo Xiaoduo had always known. But he didn't say it. He didn't need to say it to his family. However, if something happened to his sister, Zhuo Xiaoduo was sure that he would definitely be the one who risked his life to save her. How much do you want? Hearing Zhuo Xiaoyan's words, Zhuo Xiaoduo's spirit was lifted. I don't want a lot. Is 10,000 enough? Zhuo Xiaoyan touched her white jade ring, and a thick stack of cash appeared. Enough. Enough. Zhuo Xiaoduo was overjoyed. His eyes instantly shone with a bright light. Money. With this money, he could smoothly. This is my entire year's salary and bonus. Zhuo Xiaoyan rolled her eyes. Suddenly, she put the cash behind her back and puffed out her chest. Zhuo Xiaoduo, who was about to take the money, almost pressed his paw on Zhuo Xiaoyan. He quickly withdrew his hand and growled, Zhuo Xiaoyan. What are you doing? Zhuo Xiaoyan smiled, tilted her head and asked, Am I pretty? Zhuo Xiaoduo said angrily, Pretty. Pretty. Is that enough? In the room, Zhuo Xiaoyan's laughter was heard. Then, a big bundle of cash was thrown out. Take it. Also, don't let my parents know about this money. Chapter 3. Zhuo Xiaoduo looked at the big bundle of banknotes on the ground, but he didn't feel happy at all. Instead, he didn't know what to think. After a long time, he bent down to pick up the banknotes and put them in his pocket. Zhuo Xiaoduo knew Zhuo Xiaoyan's thoughts very well. Before Zhuo Xiaoduo was born, Zhuo Chenglu and Wu Yuding had already adopted Zhuo Xiaoyan. The young couple didn't have a child of their own, but they had already adopted a baby girl. Zhuo Xiaoduo felt that there must be a story behind it, but he didn't know the reason. When Zhuo Xiaoyan was 3 years old and tested to have the talent of astral souls, Wu Yuding accidentally got pregnant and gave birth to Zhuo Xiaoduo. It was really an accident. When Zhuo Xiaoduo grew up, he heard his parents talk about it many times. The couple felt that it was very strange. They obviously didn't want it. Therefore, Zhuo Xiaoduo's name was logical. But after all, he was their child. How could they not like him as he grew up day by day? When Zhuo Xiaoduo was 3 or 4 years old, Wu Yuding suddenly had an idea. If one day she and Zhuo Chenglu grew old, wouldn't it be a good thing for them to rely on each other and never be separated? But one day, Zhuo Xiaoyan overheard them during a discussion. Zhuo Xiaoyan then understood her background. It turned out that she wasn't the biological daughter of her parents. But this little girl, since she was 7 or 8 years old, had considered herself as the daughter-in-law of the Zhou family. Zhou Xiaoduo grew up year by year. How could he not understand Zhou Xiaonian's thoughts? Maybe it was love or something. That wasn't it. It was probably because Zhou Xiaonian couldn't bear to leave the family and wanted to repay her parents for raising her. Right? Therefore, even though she was very talented, Zhou Xiaonian would never agree to cultivate in any sect. No matter what sect, no matter how high and mighty cultivators tried to persuade her, Zhou Xiaonian would always refuse. I'm here. I belong to this family. I'm not going anywhere. Wu Yuding and Zhou Changlu regretted it so much that their intestines turned green. You're delaying your daughter's future. Who would have thought that this little girl would be so stubborn? If it weren't for the fact that Zhou Xiaonian's cultivation speed didn't slow down, Zhou Changlu and Wu Yuding would have felt even more guilty. Because of this, when Zhou Xiaonian proposed to marry Zhou Xiaoduo again, Zhou Changlu spoke harshly, that there was a loud bang at the door. Zhou Xiaoduo went out. Zhou Xiaonian heaved a sigh of relief. She only felt that her face was a little hot. She leaned against the door, blushing. She touched her chest and remembered that Zhou Xiaoduo almost pressed his paw on her. She blushed even more and muttered, "If you dare to press your paw on me, you're dead." 2 worlds. What 2 worlds? Zhou Xiaonian's face turned redder and redder. Humph, coward. After being in a daze for a while, she finally hurried out. After all, it was a critical moment to break through the yin-yang realm. She couldn't relax. She still had to go to the Star Martial Arts Academy to cultivate. When she stepped out of the door, she returned to her cold and distant expression, as cold as the moon in the sky. She was just at the door. In a flash, she disappeared. Blood on the fingertip, flawless jade, yin-yang fish, the heart of the stars. Zhou Xiaoduo muttered as he went out. He had to admit that this world was very beautiful. At the very least, this flawless jade was not as expensive as the one in his dream world. The most valuable stone in the Astral Souls continent was the Astral Souls stone. As for the jades and the like, they were just beautiful stones. They were not valuable at all. As for the heart of the stars, it was even easier. That was the jade of Astral Souls. His father had a lot of them in his shop. Although there were high-grade and low-grade ones, but at his current stage, he did not seem to need high-grade ones. Moreover, his father had a lot of them in his shop. Convenient. As for the blood on the fingertip, it was a matter of 1 slash. And the yin-yang fish, I know how to draw it. Ha 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 ha. For only 8,000 star coins, Zhou Xiaoduo bought a fan-sized, almost transparent, superior-grade white jade that he had his eyes on. Adding his own private savings and the 10,000 star dollars that Zhou Xiaonian gave him, Zhou Xiaoduo still had 7,000 star dollars left. He suddenly felt rich and imposing. Then, he carried it to his father's Astral Souls stone shop. Long Road Astral Souls Stone Shop. This was the name of the shop. It suited his father's lazy personality, he directly used his own name to name it. It was simple, straightforward, and practical. Dogda. Zhou Changlu was unloading the goods. When he saw his son, he was pleasantly surprised. You came at the right time. Come and help me move it in. Zhou Xiaoduo pursed his lips. What a coincidence. Coincidentally, he happened to be unloading the goods. His luck was unparalleled. Just accept your fate and do your work. The entire car weighed almost 1,000 tons. The density of the Astral Souls stone was much higher than that of high-grade jades. A fist-sized piece weighed more than 50 kilograms. Therefore, this car of Astral Souls stone did not seem to be much, but it was very heavy. The shop owners at the side all came to help. Dad, you and the uncles can carry the small ones. I'll carry the big ones. Zhuo Xiaoduo was sweating profusely. He rushed to carry them all into the shop. In the end, there were a few pieces of astral soul's stone that weighed tens of thousands of kilograms. The father and son panted heavily as they carried them down with the help of a few people. Everyone was so tired that they stuck out their tongues. If I had known, I would have asked Sister Nian to do it. Zhuo Xiaoduo stuck out his tongue. If Zhuo Xiaonian was here, she could carry the entire car with one hand. Ha! Zhuo Changlu rolled his eyes at his son. If you were a little more capable, even if you were a martial warrior now, you would be able to carry them down without panting, master beginner martial disciple. Zhuo Xiaoduo felt suffocated. He said bitterly, Dad, I also want to save my face. A beginner martial disciple who has been cultivating for 5 years still wants to save your face. Zhuo Changlu snorted. Tell me, why are you here? Let me say this first, I have no money. If you want money, go to your mother. Zhuo Xiaoduo looked sullen. I just want to help you. Look after the shop for a while. Zhuo Changlu snorted. You don't need to help. You will start school the day after tomorrow. Master Martial Disciple, you are still stuck in the same place in the Martial Disciple class. I am so proud of you. Zhuo Xiaoduo wanted to vomit blood. This was a sad thing for him. Generally, martial disciples were 8 or 10 years old. However, Zhuo Xiaoduo was still stuck in the same place at the age of 17. He had been repeating for 5 years and had become a big joke. It was true that he stood out from the crowd. Zhuo Xiaoduo was not only the oldest, he was also the tallest. The tallest student only reached his shoulder. It was too embarrassing. A few shop owners who came to help immediately burst into laughter. One of them encouraged, I think Xiaoduo is a late bloomer. He will definitely graduate. Don't you think so, Xiaoduo? Zhuo Xiaoduo expressed that he was exhausted and had no energy to complain. He said as if he was vomiting blood, I just finished moving a load of goods. Everyone should rest. Sigh. Everyone dispersed in the laughter. Zhuo Changlu had a good personality and almost never got angry. Zhuo Xiaoduo was also a person who could take a joke. Everyone got along well. Jokes aside, the shop owners felt that it was a pity that Zhuo Xiaoduo could not cultivate. They had watched this kid grow up as if he was their own child. Although they were laughing, the shop owners sighed secretly. What a good kid. Why can't he cultivate? That's right. Just now, when we were unloading the goods, little Duo rushed to carry more. He didn't even let us and his father carry the heavy goods, but he didn't say a word. Sigh, my son can't cultivate either, but where did his kindness come from? If he was so sensible, I would be happy even if he couldn't cultivate. That's true. Let's think of a way and try some folk remedies in private. It's a pity that this kid is filial, honest, and hardworking. God is blind. Zhuo Changlu looked at his son from the corner of his eyes. Filial. That's fine. But how did you build up this image of an honest, hardworking person? Zhuo Xiaoduo pulled a long face. Dad, I'm your son. Get lost if you don't tell me. Why would you work for me if you don't have a purpose? Zhuo Changlu was very familiar with his son's bad behavior. He looked at him with disdain. Tell me, what do you want? Ahem. I just want a piece of Astral Soul's jade. Ahem. It's fine as long as it's the size of a palm. It'd be better if it's bigger. It'd be even better if it's a sky blue as big as a table. Zhuo Xiaoduo walked behind his father and patted his shoulders attentively. Smack. Zhuo Changlu slapped a piece of jade of Astral Souls on the table. Take it and go. As the owner of an Astral Souls stone shop, he had no shortage of polished jade of Astral Souls. Moreover, the quality was very good. It was extremely high quality. Thank you, father, for your reward. Zhuo Xiaoduo grabbed it with a swoosh. He smiled brightly. I'll take my leave. Get lost. So be it. Everything was ready. Dad, give me a call when you're unloading the car. Don't carry it alone. Zhuo Xiaoduo shouted. Zhuo Chenglu was stunned. He unconsciously smiled and scolded, I don't need you. Get lost. Zhuo Xiaoduo happily held the cut round white jade and the jade of astral souls in his arms. He went home triumphantly. Everything was fine. Chapter 4. He walked all the way home. Zhuo Xiaoduo even felt a little emotional. His father was so generous today that he couldn't believe it. The treasure of the store, the jade of astral souls, was given away so casually with such an impatient look. For a moment, Zhuo Xiaoduo was overwhelmed by a fatherly love that was as heavy as a mountain. Humph. Dad, I know you love me. Although you don't say it, I know. When I make money, I'll get you a new wife. How many do you need? Just tell me. If you think 1 is too little, 10 won't be too much either. Find 180 to work for the family business. If one earns 1,000, that'll be more than 100,000 a month. After working for a few decades, it'll all go to Zhuo Xiaoduo. Zhuo Xiaoduo hummed a song and went home. In the afternoon, his parents weren't home, and Sister Nian wasn't home either. It was a great opportunity for him to do experiments. The broken jade pendant on his chest seemed to feel Zhuo Xiaoduo's harvest and started to heat up slightly. Back home, Zhuo Xiaoduo took out everything and placed it on the table. He calmed his mind, washed his hands, and used an ink brush to draw 2 yin-yang fish that only existed in his dream on the white jade. He carefully compared it with the dream in his memory and found that there was no difference. Finally, he took a deep breath and used a dagger to mercilessly cut open the tip of his right middle finger. Blood dripped out. It hurts. However, the pain was secondary. Zhuo Xiaoduo immediately pressed his bleeding middle finger on the white jade. He suddenly trembled and forced himself to endure it. He used his blood to smear the yin-yang fish pattern that he had just drawn. He smeared it bit by bit. One of the yin-yang fish was smeared with blood, leaving only the eyes. The other fish was smeared with blood, leaving only the eyes. The rest of the fish was blank and only the outline was drawn with blood. Halfway through, the blood solidified, so he cut again. Finally, the 2 yin-yang fish turned into 2 blood fish. Zhuo Xiaoduo was afraid that it was not enough, so he made another cut on his finger and dripped his blood on it, trying to make it as full as possible. After waiting for an hour, when the blood on the jade began to dry up, he cut his finger and dripped some blood on it. After doing this 3 times, when the blood was at its peak, he placed the jade of astral souls in the middle of the 2 yin-yang fishes. Then, he placed the broken jade pendant on the jade of astral souls. At this moment, the white jade suddenly emitted a blinding blood-red light. It rose up and instantly enveloped the jade of astral souls and the damaged jade pendant. With a loud bang, the light suddenly spread 3 feet and enveloped Zhuo Xiaoduo's body. Then, the white jade, together with the jade of astral souls and the damaged jade pendant, rose into the air and spun in the air. The blood-red light became more and more intense. The jade of astral souls could be seen with the naked eye disintegrating into powder. Then, with a whoosh, 2 yin-yang fishes appeared in the air. They shook their heads and wagged their tails as they spun one round. Then, they turned into a ray of light and rushed into the space between Zhuo Xiaoduo's eyebrows. Countless pieces of information turned into streams of light and rushed into his consciousness. Zhuo Xiaoduo felt as if he had been hit by a speeding train. His consciousness scattered like stars in the sky. Poof! Like a piece of wood, he fell flat on his back. He fell onto the soft cushion that he had prepared beforehand. For a moment, his mind was filled with all sorts of strange things. While he was unconscious, a ray of light rose from his chest and rushed straight into the awakened astral souls in his energy center. His astral soul, which was originally like a weak little flame, suddenly expanded. With a thunderous boom, it covered his entire body. His meridians were filled with the light from his astral soul, and the surface of his entire body was covered with a cobweb of light. In an instant, he was like a small sun. The light was so dazzling that it was impossible to look at it directly. Then, the light suddenly retracted and returned to his energy center. The astral souls were still a small flame, but it was burning vigorously. The flame danced and was full of vitality. The color of the flame slowly changed from red to a deep purple color. Every time it danced, there was a trace of energy that expanded his body. After a long time, Zhuo Xiaoduo slowly woke up and muttered, "What's the appearance of a celestial being?" Countless pieces of knowledge collided in his mind, causing Zhuo Xiaoduo to have a splitting headache. After a long while, he finally straightened it out and couldn't help but mumble, "Did I really cheat before?" There was no other reason. Now, the thing that filled his mind, including almost everything, was a complete set of physiognomy. The appearance of a celestial being. Everything has its appearance. The sky has its secrets, the earth has its landform, the mountain has its height, the water has its depth, the grass has its luxuriance, the tree has its roots. The appearance of a human is basically the same. Life and death, reincarnation, misfortune and fortune, see clearly at a glance, past life and future life, see clearly at a glance. The fate of a human is the fate of the heavens, life and death depend on fate, misfortune and fortune depend on luck. This is called fate. Yin and yang are born with a foothold, the appearance of a celestial being cannot be hidden. Finally, outside of physiognomy, there was the eye of fortune. Additional benefits? Zhuo Xiaoduo muttered to himself, "The eye of fortune, with one luck point, I can see a person's misfortune and fortune for 3 months. Luck points. 1 drop for each appearance. 10 drops for 1 point. Can increase cultivation. I'm confused." In the end, Zhuo Xiaoduo finally understood. The appearance of a celestial being, the appearance of all things. Now, he could only come into contact with the appearance of a human, he could not come into contact with anything else. And now, he was only at the bottom level of a physiognomy master, the apprentice stage. At this stage, he could only see some superficial things, commonly known as a cheat. If he wanted to see a person's misfortune and fortune for 3 months, he would need to use luck points and the eye of fortune. And luck points could only be obtained after the physiognomy was fulfilled. If he wanted to level up and improve his cultivation, he had to constantly look at his physiognomy and fulfill it. Only then could he obtain luck points and improve his ability. Then, he would be able to look at more physiognomy and obtain more. In short, there was one sentence, physiognomy. Constantly looking at one's physiognomy. And so on. And the luck points obtained from physiognomy could be used to improve the physiognomy master's level and cultivation. It could also be used to look at a person's misfortune and fortune for 3 months. This is forcing me to go down the path of a charlatan and never return. Zhuo Xiaoduo sucked in a breath of cold air. But I'm such an honest person. How can I be a big liar? Zhuo Xiaoduo was very sad. He felt that with his open and upright nature, his heart that was open and honest, his heart that was open to the wind and the moon, his heart that cared about the country and the people, his heart that worried about the worries of the world. He should not be able to do something like swindling. Wasn't this forcing a good girl to become a prostitute? Was he that kind of person? However, after he understood it in detail, his mood immediately changed. Awesome! Zhuo Xiaoduo took a deep breath. In the future, even if I can't become an expert, I can travel the world with this set of skills and not have to worry about food and drink. Actually, being a charlatan is quite admirable. It doesn't affect my upright image. But the eye of fortune formed by the white jade, the yin-yang fish, the incomplete jade pendant, and the jade of astral souls. Where are they? With a thought. Suddenly, his eyes swelled and hurt. Sour. Zhuo Xiaoduo only blinked twice. Suddenly, a strong sour feeling seemed to come from the depths of his soul. Caught off guard, his face was already full of tears. Then, he rushed out like a flood that had opened the floodgates. His two eyes were like a small river, flowing non-stop. Damn. I haven't cried for many years. How can I make up for it by crying this time? Zhuo Xiaoduo cried crazily. He felt that his eyes had become two springs. Doggy. Zhuo Xiaonian pushed the door open and walked in. She saw Zhuo Xiaoduo crying with a face full of tears and an extremely sad look. Suddenly, her heart trembled. She said in surprise, Duo, what's wrong with you? Why? Are you crying? Zhuo Xiaoduo frantically wiped his tears. I'm not crying. For a moment, he felt like fucking a dog. He was so embarrassed. He was a dignified man, but he was caught crying and couldn't stop. His tears kept flowing. Zhuo Xiaonian looked at him in a daze. Suddenly, she sighed and walked in. She hugged Zhuo Xiaoduo in her arms, took a breath, and said in a trembling voice, Xiaoduo. Don't cry. You can definitely cultivate. I promise, no matter what price I have to pay, I will let you cultivate. Zhuo Xiaoduo's face was full of tears. I'm not. I understand. Zhuo Xiaonian hugged his head tightly and also shed tears. I've been thinking of a way. Don't cry. Zhuo Xiaoduo was speechless. I'm really not crying. I just can't hold back my tears. Zhuo Xiaonian, don't hug me so tightly. I'm almost suffocated. Tears kept flowing like a fountain. Zhuo Xiaoduo felt that the water in his body was about to flow out. Just when Zhuo Xiaonian was also crying, Zhuo Xiaoduo was already in despair. His tears miraculously stopped. Zhuo Xiaoduo struggled and broke free from Zhuo Xiaonian's arms. He gasped for air and looked up at Zhuo Xiaonian. He was very ashamed. I didn't cry just now because I can't cultivate. Just as he was speaking, he suddenly froze. He only felt that his heart had suddenly stopped beating. Just when he looked at Zhuo Xiaonian's face, a cool feeling suddenly rushed up from between his eyebrows and rushed into his eyes. Then, he saw a line of words floating out from Zhuo Xiaonian's face. Zhuo Xiaonian, female, 19 years old, peak of embryonic breathing realm. 2.5 months later, in Star Weapon Gold Crystal Room, when breaking through to Primordial Core Realm, she was attacked and died due to Qi Deviancy deviation. Chapter 5. Zhuo Xiaoduo was stunned. Zhuo Xiaonian was going to die. Since he was young, Sister Nian had taken care of him in every possible way. She was going to die in 2.5 months. Looking at the beautiful face in front of him, who was heartbroken because of him, Zhuo Xiaoduo felt suffocated. Why was there a line of words in front of him? What was this? Zhuo Xiaoduo suddenly asked, Sister Nian, are you going to break into the yin-yang realm in 2.5 months? Are you going to break into the inner core realm? Zhuo Xiaonian was sobbing. Zhuo Xiaoduo's tears made her heart twitch. She felt like her heart was going to break. When she heard this question, her heart skipped a beat. She looked up at Zhuo Xiaoduo with red eyes and sobbed, How did you know? After asking, she came back to her senses. She wiped her tears and asked again, How did you know in 2.5 months? She suddenly realized, and her eyes widened. The shock in Zhuo Xiaonian's heart was no small matter. Many people knew that she was going to break into the yin-yang realm. Because of her cultivation, it was an indisputable fact. However, everyone only knew that it would be soon, or at most a month later. And a month later, they would have to release the wrong information and continue to confuse her. The specific time and location could not be leaked. This was a matter of life and death. When a martial artist broke into the inner core realm, it was a huge barrier. In other words, the road to becoming a powerful martial artist was completely opened. The inner core realm was the grandmaster realm in the eyes of ordinary people. The younger one broke into the inner core realm, the more promising it was. Zhuo Xiaonian was only 19 years old. No one had broken into the inner core realm at the age of 19 in the Central Plains for thousands of years. If she broke through, it would create a new page in history. A 19-year-old inner core realm cultivator. A 19-year-old grandmaster. This was a miracle that could shake the world. Therefore, this news would definitely attract people's attention, and it would not be peaceful. Naturally, there would be people with ulterior motives who wouldn't want Zhuo Xiaonian to break through successfully. Under normal circumstances, most of the assassinations would not be effective, especially in a city that Zhuo Xiaonian was familiar with. It was too easy to escape, hide, or even be killed. However, during the process of breaking through, especially at the critical moment of breaking through a bottleneck, even an ordinary person's shout would be enough to cause the person's internal energy to become chaotic and go crazy. If they wanted to kill such a genius, that would undoubtedly be the best time to do so. As for the date of Zhuo Xiaonian's breakthrough, at least until now, was the biggest secret in Phoenix City. As far as Zhuo Xiaonian knew, there were only two people who knew about it. One was Zhuo Xiaonian herself, and the other was Zhuo Xiaonian's master. Even the use of the Star Source Room was now fully booked. There was no sign that Zhuo Xiaonian was going to use it. Zhuo Xiaonian was bewildered. How did Zhuo Xiaoduo know? Was it just a random guess? But wasn't this guess too accurate? Looking at Zhuo Xiaonian's reaction, Zhuo Xiaoduo's heart turned cold. The content of that line was actually true. Holding on to a sliver of hope, Zhuo Xiaoduo probed, in the star weapon gold crystal. Zhuo Xiaonian straightened her body and widened her beautiful eyes. Her beautiful eyes were filled with shock. He really knew. The star weapon gold crystal was the result of her and her master's long deliberation. In order to avoid being messed up, they didn't even use the top 3 Jade Crystal Room, Sky Crystal Room, and Soul Crystal Room. Instead, they chose the more ordinary Gold Crystal Room. This was a top secret among top secrets. She had never told anyone about it, and her master even saw her as an extension of her life. She would only be more careful than herself. But, how did Xiaoduo know? Zhuo Xiaonian's face turned pale. She turned around and said hoarsely, not necessarily. Everything is still undecided. Perhaps others would believe this, but Zhuo Xiaoduo, who grew up with Zhuo Xiaonian, could tell at a glance that Zhuo Xiaonian was lying. Otherwise, she wouldn't have turned around. He was right. Zhuo Xiaoduo could only feel his heart sinking. Using the physiognomy in his mind, he carefully looked at Zhuo Xiaonian's face. He saw that between her eyebrows, there was a faint black line forming. The black gas between her eyebrows was gradually filling up. This was the sign of death. Zhuo Xiaoduo's heart was in a mess. What should I say to make her believe me? I'm just a martial disciple now. What should I do to help Sister Nian avoid this calamity? Well, actually, for something like a breakthrough, it doesn't matter if it's earlier or later, right? Zhuo Xiaoduo said dryly. Well, it's better to prepare more. Zhuo Xiaonian put down the doubts in her heart and smiled sweetly, don't worry about me. But you, little dog. Why were you crying so sadly just now? Zhuo Xiaonian had already made up her mind. When she went to the Star Martial Arts Academy tomorrow, she must discuss this matter with her master. What exactly went wrong? She really wasn't crying. She was just blinded. Zhuo Xiaoduo also suppressed this matter in his heart. Now that he knew, he couldn't just stand by and watch. No matter what, he had to resolve this matter. Sister Nian, absolutely, cannot die. Sister Nian, you've protected me for so many years. Now, it's my turn to protect you. Zhuo Xiaoduo said silently in his heart and made up his mind. Zhuo Xiaonian's calamity made Zhuo Xiaoduo breathless. Thinking of this, the aura on his body became inexplicably violent. The rims of his eyes were red. He had to change this matter even if he had to risk his life. He gritted his teeth so hard that they creaked. The sky was already dark. Zhuo Xiaonian frowned and sat on Zhuo Xiaoduo's bedside. She was thinking about something and had a headache. Xiaoduo couldn't cultivate. How could she change his aptitude? The elixir that could change one's aptitude was now priceless. It hadn't appeared for a long time. Occasionally, it would be secretly dealt with by the big families. The news couldn't be leaked at all. What should she do? And how did Xiaoduo know about her breakthrough? What went wrong? Zhuo Xiaoduo was also anxious. Zhuo Xiaoduo had never really thought of himself as a loser. When the astral souls were awakened, Zhuo Xiaoduo knew that although his aptitude wasn't good, it was definitely not trash. However, the dreams began to appear sporadically. Then, the astral souls suddenly became half dead. He couldn't break through to the martial disciple realm and kept pacing back and forth. Especially after the appearance of the strange broken jade pendant, no matter how hard he tried, his cultivation couldn't make any progress. It even regressed. Zhuo Xiaoduo knew very well that it wasn't that he wasn't hardworking. However, he was a martial disciple 4 years ago. How could his cultivation deteriorate after 4 years of hard work? It didn't make sense. Now that all the restrictions had been removed, Zhuo Xiaoduo could already feel that the astral power between heaven and earth was crazily rushing into his body with the circulation of his spiritual power. It was like a desert that had been dry for a long time and was crazily absorbing water. And the speed was getting faster and faster, faster and faster. The barrier between martial disciple and martial disciple was shaking violently. It could be broken at any time. That he was just worried that it was still too slow. There were only a little more than 2 months left. It was too urgent. Wu Yuding and Zhuo Changlu walked together. They talked as they walked. Both of them were frowning. The two siblings lowered their heads, deep in thought. Finally, they heard the sound of the door closing with a bang. Then, they heard Wu Yuding's voice, "Doggy. Is your sister back?" Zhuo Xiaoduo walked to the door weakly. "Mother. Can you not call me Doggy? My sister is in my room." Wu Yuding immediately became vigilant. "What are you doing?" "Doggy, I'm warning you, you." Zhuo Xiaonian rushed out with a red face. "Mother. What are you thinking?" The two of them went out and saw Zhuo Changlu and Wu Yuding looking at them suspiciously. "Don't cause trouble," Zhuo Changlu warned. "Behave yourselves," Wu Yuding warned. "You guys are so annoying." Zhuo Xiaonian rushed into her room with a red face. Behind Zhuo Xiaonian, Zhuo Xiaoduo appeared speechless. He looked at his parents with a hopeless expression. "Let's eat." Wu Yuding didn't notice anything unusual and sighed in relief. Then, she rolled her eyes and pinched Zhuo Changlu. "As a father, you don't even trust your own son and daughter. That's too much. I've never seen a father like you." She turned and left. Zhuo Changlu was a little confused. "Did I say it first? Didn't you shout the loudest just now?" During dinner, Zhuo Changlu said, "Little Nian, you don't have to go home every day during this period. You should stay at Xingwu and ask your master for advice during critical times." Zhuo Xiaonian smiled gently. "It's okay. I'm ready." Her beautiful eyes looked at her parents, then at Zhuo Xiaoduo. Her eyes were filled with deep longing. She would die if she failed to break into the yin and yang world. Although she was confident that she would succeed, there was always a 1 in a million chance. What if, really happened, then the time she spent with her family would be the last happiness she had. Zhuo Xiaoduo focused on his eyes as he ate. He felt the coolness rush up again, but it was much weaker now. It instantly reached his eyes. Then, he looked at his parents' faces. He wanted to see how his parents were faring so that he could be prepared. At first glance, Zhuo Xiaoduo was dumbfounded. There was nothing on Zhuo Changlu's face. He looked at his mother. There was also nothing on Wu Yuding's face. Zhuo Xiaoduo was stunned. What was going on? Where were the words? The coolness had disappeared, but he still didn't see anything. Could it be that the ability that he had painstakingly obtained had failed? He looked left and right. Zhuo Changlu finally couldn't help but put down his chopsticks. He faced Zhuo Xiaoduo and sat up straight. He looked up and stared quietly. Dad, why are you looking at me like that? Zhuo Changlu put on a fake smile. I think you've never seen me before, so I'll let you take a closer look. Look carefully. This is your father. Collect, recommend, brothers and sisters, I'm looking at you with my pure and innocent eyes, ah. Chapter 6. Zhuo Xiaoduo was worried about Zhuo Xiaonian, puzzled that he couldn't see his parents' faces, and excited that the astral souls continued to enter his body. He didn't sleep well the whole night. Furthermore, he realized that no matter how hard he tried to circulate his qi, the cool feeling was gone. It seems that as this ability was discovered, it came with a small amount of luck points. I saw Sister Nian's and used them all. Zhuo Xiaoduo calculated in his heart. But he was still a little confused. When he saw his parents' faces, he also felt the coolness, although it was very short. But he didn't see anything. What's going on? But it's good to be able to cultivate. Not only Sister Nian, but I, Zhuo Xiaoduo, can also do something for my family. Zhuo Xiaoduo was very excited. And I must cultivate hard and then think of a way to solve Xiao Nian's crisis. After thinking for a while, he came up with 17 or 18 plans. And then, one by one, the next morning, Zhuo Xiaoduo crawled out of the door with 2 dark circles under his eyes and went to school. Although standing among a group of little boys and girls was indeed like a crane in a flock of chickens, it was indeed a little embarrassing. Although I'm still the class monitor. But the problem is, I'm 17 years old, and I'm 185 meters tall. Standing among the little guys whose average height is less than 1.2 meters and being classmates. I also want to save face. But since I can't save face, then I can only be shameless. But today is different. I'm going to level up. From today onwards, I'm not going to kindergarten. I'm going to primary school. Because last night, I broke through to martial disciple. Last night, feeling the astral soul's power entering his body and increasing constantly, Zhuo Xiaoduo was very comfortable. He couldn't help but fart, and he felt that the bottleneck of martial disciple suddenly opened up. Years of hard work with no results, and a fart broke through the gate of martial disciple. In the past, I was a crane among chickens and ducks, but today, I'm flying among phoenixes. Zhuo Xiaoduo could not help but recite a poem. He suddenly felt that his literary talent was soaring. After the breakthrough, he did not stay idle. He mobilized the power of the astral souls in his body and started to refine his bones. By daybreak, he had already refined half of his right leg. In terms of speed, she was almost catching up with Zhuo Xiaonian. I've transformed, I've become a genius. I am a warrior now. Zhuo Xiaoduo was excited as he brushed his teeth. Even when he went to the toilet, he couldn't help but put his hands behind his back, showing the demeanor of an expert. It was the first time that Zhuo Xiaoduo was in such high spirits at school. He was flying fast all the way. He directly rushed into the teacher's office of the martial disciple class. Teacher Hu, I've broken through. I've broken through to martial warrior. Zhuo Xiaoduo said proudly. You broke through. Teacher Hu's eyes widened in surprise. Zhuo Xiaoduo had already repeated 5 years in his class. This had seriously affected Teacher Hu's performance pay. Teacher Hu's beautiful face looked a little haggard. He did not get a promotion bonus for 5 years in a row. The school's leaders seriously questioned Teacher Hu's teaching standards. Although a student's aptitude was not good, he could not break through to martial disciple after repeating 5 years in a row. You are not qualified as a teacher. Since you are not qualified, I will stay in your class to punish you. Teacher Hu was already in despair. She wanted to wait until Zhou Xiaoduo turned 18 and automatically dropped out of school. Then, she would work hard to earn money to support the family. She did not expect that suddenly, good news would fall from the sky. Zhou Xiaoduo had broken through. At this moment, Teacher Hu was extremely excited. She was excited that she had finally sent Zhou Xiaoduo away. She was also sincerely happy that Zhou Xiaoduo had finally broken through. This child had suffered here for 5 years and could finally walk out. Teacher Hu was also happy for him. In these 5 years, Teacher Hu clearly knew how hard Zhou Xiaoduo worked. With an adult figure, he mixed in with the children to go to school. How could he just stand out? It was just that the strange looks around him would have been unbearable if it were someone else. However, Zhou Xiaoduo persevered and did not miss a single class. He forced himself to endure and worked harder than any other child. Cultivating in school could make him faint. However, when he went home after school, he washed his hair and shook it. He looked heartless and shameless. He endured everything and carried it on his own so that his family would not worry. This kind of life had been going on for 6 years. He had sent away 5 batches of students. Yet, he had endured all the criticism and strange gazes for 6 years without slacking. Many people said that he was thick-skinned, but Teacher Hu did not think so. Although Zhou Xiaoduo had affected her performance bonus for 5 years, she had never said anything. Instead, she had always been distressed. If Xiaoduo can break through this stage, his future achievements will be limitless. This was what Hu Ruoyun had said. Last night, on a whim, I broke through. Zhou Xiaoduo was simple and honest with a little smugness. He chuckled. Didn't I come to tell you early in the morning? Hu Ruoyun smiled with relief. That's great. Xiaoduo, you must work hard. Strive to break through the martial master realm and enter the innate stage before the age of 20 no matter what. She smiled from the bottom of her heart. From Zhou Xiaoduo's heartless smile, she could feel that Zhou Xiaoduo was relaxed at this moment. As well as the carefree feeling of letting bygones be bygones. She was completely relieved. 5 years of hardships did not leave any shadow in this child's heart. On the contrary, it made his character even more tenacious. I'll take you to the warrior class in the afternoon to report. Hu Ruoyun said happily. Your foundation has been laid, and your cultural theory has been directly cultivated to the advanced level. 1/3 of the semester is already over. It may be very tiring for you to enter the warrior class directly, but you'll be fine if you endure it. After all, according to the normal semester, if you wait for another 3 months, your time will be wasted. Zhou Xiaoduo said gratefully, I understand. Thank you, Teacher Hu. Zhou Xiaoduo respected Teacher Hu from the bottom of his heart. He had wasted so much of her performance bonus for 6 years, but she had never treated him differently. In exchange, she had endless patience and care. Zhou Xiaoduo was full of mischief and rebelliousness, but he could not vent it no matter how hard he tried. Now that he was finally free and unshackled from Hu Ruoyun's shackles, Zhou Xiaoduo was also relaxed. Hu Ruoyun put Zhou Xiaoduo back in the class and hurried to the principal's office. Zhou Xiaoduo has broken through. The Zhou Xiaoduo who has been repeating for 5 years. Principal Li's eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets. He has really broken through. And he has taken a big step forward. The star energy in his dantian is rich, and the sparks are flowing backward to temper his bones. He is almost done tempering his right leg. Hu Ruoyun was happy. This child has finally made it. Principal Li Changjiang looked at Hu Ruoyun and sighed. You have also made it. Hu Ruoyun's eyes reddened as she said, I'm very happy that this child is capable of making it through. Li Changjiang sighed softly and looked at his wife. It has been hard on you. Zhou Xiaoduo had not been able to break through. If he was placed in another teacher's class, they would definitely be unhappy. Principal Li could only put this burden in his wife's class. Anyway, the school was so big, and not many people knew that they were husband and wife. At most, they would curse the principal in their hearts for being unfair, but who would dare to say it out loud? What do you plan to do? Li Changjiang asked. Arrange for him to enter the warrior class immediately. Hu Ruoyun said firmly, this child doesn't have much time left. If we delay any longer, I am worried that we will return to our old path. Li Changjiang looked guilty. All right, I will arrange for him to enter the Astral Souls Tower in the afternoon. First, he will register it on the Heaven and Earth net. Then, I will arrange for him to enter the warrior class immediately. He sighed softly. Don't worry, I have been thinking of a way. Old Liao from the capital has already said that there is news about that thing. Hu Ruoyun said casually, well, it doesn't matter. Let's take it slow. After so many years, I have already gotten used to it. I just want to see this group of children grow up smoothly. She turned and walked out. Hurry up and go to the Heaven and Earth net. Heaven and Earth net. Everyone who had broken through to the martial warrior level would enter the Astral Souls Tower for the first time. Then, they would undergo trials in the Astral Souls Tower to test their perseverance, temperament, and other qualities. The person's records would be recorded on the Heaven and Earth net for the first time. When they reached the martial master level, they would be evaluated again. When they reached the innate level, they would be evaluated again. When they reached the embryonic breathing realm, they would be evaluated again. When they reached the inner core realm, they would be evaluated again. The evaluation results would be recorded on the Heaven and Earth net's intranet. The intranet was also known as the Master Hall. This step was known as the next level. It also proved that in terms of cultivation, they had reached a height that ordinary people could not reach. At that time, according to the evaluation results and the person's personality, they would be assigned to do something. They would make the best use of their talents. As for the next level, no one knew. This whole process was known as the 3 touches and 5 evaluations. The first 3 touches, the 4th is a detailed evaluation, and the 5th is a direct evaluation. That was why there was the saying 3 touches and 5 evaluations, next level. Alright, Hu Ruoyun nodded. I believe that Xiao Duo can get an A grade. She was full of confidence in Zhuo Xiao Duo. She felt that with Zhuo Xiaoduo's temperament and perseverance, it would be too easy for him to pass the first stage of the 3 touches and 5 evaluations. Zhuo Xiaoduo was surrounded by a group of little Lolas and little Shotas. Their eyes were red, and they were crying. Big brother Xiaoduo, don't go. A little Lolita cried and sniffled. Class rep Xiaoduo, don't go. A little Shota hugged Zhuo Xiaoduo's thigh. Big brother Xiaoduo, don't leave us. All the little Lolas and Shotas sniffled and cried. They were reluctant to part with him. Zhuo Xiaoduo was filled with emotions. He was not a bad person. He did not take special care of the little ones. He did not expect that these little ones would be so reluctant to part with him. It seemed that his character was not bad. It was not in vain for him to repeat 5 years. Big brother Xiaoduo, don't go. If you go, I will be at the bottom. A little Shota cried loudly. He was so sad that his tears and snot flowed out together. Big brother Xiaoduo, don't go. If you go, every time my dad says that I am a martial disciple at 9 years old, I can't say that there is a Zhuo Xiaoduo in my class who is 17 years old. My dad will beat me. A 9-year-old little boy was crying so hard that his whole body was twitching. I will be beaten to death. Woo woo. Don't go. Big brother Xiaoduo, don't go. If you go, we will lose our sense of superiority. Sob sob sob. All the little ones cried at the same time. Zhuo Xiaoduo was speechless. Brothers, don't go. Leave your recommendation tickets before you go. Chapter 7. Zhuo Xiaoduo's face was filled with black lines. The veins on his forehead were bulging. His eyes were filled with murderous intent. Suddenly, a feeling of wanting to kill someone sprung up spontaneously. MMP. A bunch of little bastards. So that's why you're not letting me go. It's not because you can't bear to part with me. Zhuo Xiaoduo exploded. His left leg kicked away the little boy who was hugging his left leg, and his right leg kicked away the little girl who was hugging his right leg. Zhuo Xiaoduo was furious. Go away. Go away. If you hug me again, I'll curse you to repeat for 5 years. Boom. The group of little guys dispersed. This curse was too vicious. Everyone saw how uncomfortable Zhuo Xiaoduo was during this period. Who would dare to do it again? Wouldn't they be laughed at? Zhuo Xiaoduo walked out of the door with his head held high. Suddenly, he felt relieved. He turned around and said fiercely, "You little bastards, don't fall into my hands in the future. Otherwise, I'll let you know the consequences of mocking me." Humph. After threatening them, Zhuo Xiaoduo looked at the sign of Martial Disciple Class 8 and felt a surge of emotions. In the Martial Disciple class, which was equivalent to the kindergarten in his dream, he cultivated his cultural studies until he graduated from university. This was truly an unprecedented achievement. Miracles are always created by extraordinary people. And I, Zhuo Xiaoduo, am undoubtedly that extraordinary person. Stepping out of the door, he only felt the dazzling sunlight. Suddenly, the world was vast and bright. Looking up to the sky and laughing out loud, how can I be a martial disciple? With this departure, the dragon returns to the sea and the tiger returns to the deep mountains. The sea is wide and the sky is high. The sharpness of a sword is sharpened, and the fragrance of plum blossoms comes from the bitter cold. I, Zhuo Xiaoduo, have made it. Zhuo Xiaoduo felt the surging power of the martial disciple realm in his body. For a moment, he felt like he was floating. I've really become a strong warrior. Roar. Under the bright sunlight, Teacher Hu walked over quickly, as if he was bathed in holy light. Feng City Star Academy. In front of the Astral Souls Tower. Just release your heart. Hu Ruoyun's eyes were filled with encouragement. Great. Zhuo Xiaoduo was suddenly enlightened. Zhuo Xiaoduo walked into the Astral Souls Tower excitedly. He began the first touch of his martial arts career. I've been looking forward to it for a long time. Just as he was about to step through the door, an impatient voice could be heard. The headmaster's office. Li Changjiang stared at the surveillance screen of the Tower of Astral Souls. He also wanted to see what level heroes who had been held back for 5 years, would be evaluated. At the side, Hu Ruoyun drank her tea as if nothing had happened. He was very confident. Repeat for 5 years and persevere. He hadn't made any progress in 6 years, but he had always worked hard. How could such a person's willpower not be first class? What a joke. Teacher Hu was waiting to cheer for his students. The image gradually appeared. Zhuo Xiaoduo entered a strange environment that it was a small town. Zhuo Xiaoduo felt as if he had arrived in a small town the moment he entered. The gentle breeze with the smell of spring blew on his face. There was only one feeling, great. He felt that his footsteps were lighter. Riding on the crest of success, I'll see everything in a day. Suddenly at the intersection, an old man was walking unsteadily. A car happened to drive past, and the old man couldn't dodge in time. He was hit by the car and fell down with a scream. Zhuo Xiaoduo shouted, "Stop the car." The flying dust covered the license plate. The car didn't stop. Instead, it sped up and disappeared into the distance with a whoosh. Zhuo Xiaoduo was stunned. He saw that the old man was lying on the ground, unconscious. His white hair was beginning to bleed. His head was smashed on the roadside stone. A pool of blood spread on the ground. Save him. Duo could tell at a glance that although the old man didn't hit his head hard, his head had hit the pavement hard. He was afraid that his life would be in danger for a while. He didn't have time to think. He rushed up and held the old man's head with one hand and quickly checked his injuries with the other. Then, he quickly took out his mobile phone and called the ambulance. After hanging up, he immediately checked his injuries, fixed his broken bones, and made sure that his breathing was smooth. Then, he reached into the old man's pocket and took out his mobile phone. He skillfully cracked the password, found the phone book, and called his wife. In front of the surveillance camera. Li Changjiang couldn't help but sigh when he saw the old man being hit. It's still a cliché plot. Can't there be a new idea? When he saw Duo rushing to save the old man, he couldn't help but praise, this young man is good. Then, he saw him treating the injury, saving the old man, and calling the ambulance in one go. He couldn't help but praise him again, calm, not panicked, organized, and orderly. Not bad, not bad. Then, he saw Duo take out the old man's mobile phone, unlock the password, and make the call. He was stunned and muttered, he knows how to do this. This is a little familiar. Like a habitual offender. Headmaster Li didn't say these words. Teacher Hu covered his face and coughed, this student. Ahem, his interests are a little mixed. The illusion in the Tower of Astral Souls was still going on. The ambulance arrived. Duo was the only witness and also the savior. His hand was still holding the old man's neck, and he couldn't let go at all. Naturally, he went to the hospital together with the old man. However, when the family of the injured arrived, they looked at Duo suspiciously. From the family's point of view, Duo's blood-stained body and tired face were too suspicious. They didn't even get a word of gratitude in return. When the door of the emergency room opened, the family rushed in and went to the ward. Then, because the perpetrator had escaped, the family had to pay for the medical expenses themselves. It was a huge sum. However, from the way this family was dressed, it was obvious that they weren't rich. As expected, things developed in the way Headmaster Li and his wife expected. The family identified Duo as the perpetrator and demanded compensation from Duo, including medical expenses, lost wages, nursing fees, and living expenses. As expected, he was being blackmailed. It was as vulgar as ever. Duo had just arrived and was unfamiliar with the place. He was surrounded by a large group of people and had no room to refute at all. There was no way for him to defend himself, and he was directly determined to be the perpetrator. The old man who had just regained consciousness also pointed out that Duo was the one who hit him. Although there was guilt in his eyes, his tone was extremely firm. Seeing that Duo was being blackmailed, Li Changjiang and Hu Ruoyan both sighed. This was the usual trick of the Tower of Astral Souls illusion realm. It was specially used to test the temperament of the trial takers. And Duo was now in the middle of it. How could he escape? Many of the trial takers were enraged by the current atmosphere. They were so angry that they hurt people and rushed out of the door. It was common for them to take revenge after the incident. Of course, there were also those who admitted defeat and worked honestly to repay their debts until the illusion ended. However, those who were mentally strong would choose to take legal action. As long as they submitted enough evidence, they could turn the situation around. Or they could look for evidence to prove their innocence. This situation seemed to be disadvantageous to them, but as long as they searched carefully, there were too many pieces of evidence that were beneficial to the trial takers. Of course, these pieces of evidence needed to be found by the trial takers themselves. There wouldn't be any righteous people who would take the initiative to stand up for them. It depended on how a person dealt with the same situation and what method they used to deal with it. At this point, a long time had passed in the illusion realm. However, to the two people outside the screen, only a few minutes had passed. Although Duo's face was full of anger, although he was unwilling, although he was really powerless to resist at this moment. He was quickly judged to be responsible by the judicial authorities and had to work to repay his debts. Looking at Zhuo Xiaoduo's angry face, Li Changjiang and Hu Ruoyun were helpless. He didn't choose to take legal action. Moreover, he didn't defend himself. The only words he said were, "It wasn't me, it really wasn't me." He kept saying it over and over again, stuttering. He looked simple and honest, but he was too simple and honest. He didn't say anything else. At first, I thought that this kid's evaluation wasn't low. He shouldn't be lacking in mental strength, or at least he shouldn't be lacking in calmness. But now, it seems that he's clearly not the combat type, nor the intellectual type. He's not even the average type. It should be. Even if he can cultivate successfully in the future, I'm afraid he'll be mainly a support and logistics type. Li Changjiang sighed. His personality is a little too soft. Hu Ruoyun frowned, somewhat puzzled. Looking at Zhuo Xiaoduo, who was working honestly, no matter how she thought about it, she felt that this guy wasn't the kind of person who would be taken advantage of. But what exactly was going on? Zhuo Xiaoduo worked honestly to pay off his debts. In the blink of an eye, a month had passed, and his salary was paid. The two saw that Zhuo Xiaoduo only left 1/10 of his salary for his living expenses. Then, he put the rest in his pocket and went out. Obviously, he was going to pay the family. Hu Ruoyun and Li Changjiang were greatly disappointed. This guy was too weak. He didn't have the slightest bit of courage to speak of. Not only did he have no means, but he also didn't have any wisdom. He had no meticulous thoughts and was at the mercy of others. He was simply a disgrace to cultivators. Hu Ruoyun became more and more confused. This was Zhuo Xiaoduo. Seeing that Zhuo Xiaoduo was about to reach the family's house, in the screen, the usually honest Zhuo Xiaoduo's expression suddenly changed when he knocked on the door and got an answer. The moment the person inside opened the door, he kicked fiercely. With a loud bang, the anti-theft door in front of him was kicked open, making a loud noise. The family inside looked at Zhuo Xiaoduo in horror and surprise. They obviously didn't expect that this seemingly honest and submissive young man would be so violent today. Could it be that they opened the door the wrong way? They saw Zhuo Xiaoduo aggressively enter the house like a demon. Without saying a word, he rushed into the house like a tiger rushing into a flock of sheep. He punched and kicked, pointing to the south and striking to the north, striking to the east and striking to the west. Except for the old man and his wife who were in the hospital, everyone else was beaten up. Including the old man's son, daughter, daughter-in-law, son-in-law, and 2 grandsons, all of them were mercilessly beaten up by Zhuo Xiaoduo. As he beat them, he shouted, "Awesome! So awesome! I've waited for a month for this day. Awesome, I'm so happy. Ha ha ha." Brothers, this chapter is a little short. Recommendation votes. Sigh, give me more. Chapter 8. Li Changjiang and his wife, who were watching from outside, opened their mouths wide at the same time. They were speechless. They never dreamed that things would turn out this way. At first, Li Changjiang thought that Zhuo Xiaoduo had lost his temper and couldn't take it anymore. However, upon closer inspection, he realized that although Zhuo Xiaoduo seemed to be beating people violently, he was actually very measured. He didn't beat people until they were crippled, and there weren't even any bone fractures. However, the people who were beaten up would have to lie in bed for at least a few days. Their whole body would be in extreme pain, but there wouldn't be any serious consequences. We're going to sue you. You evil man. You won't have a good ending." The old man's son was lying on the ground with a face full of resentment. He was beaten the most miserably. His muscles, bones, skin, and flesh were all beaten up. Now, it could be said that he was in extreme pain. He was in so much pain that he wished he was dead. The other family members were not much better. They were all crying and screaming as they lay on the ground. Duo casually pulled a chair over and sat down before he slowly said, "How could I have a good ending when I met your family? Aren't I here to give you the medical fees?" He took out some money and slapped it on the table. "This is my salary for this month. I only kept 300. It's in accordance with the law here. The rest is all yours to buy medicine for you." The family was stunned when they heard this. The ferocious thug just a moment ago had turned back into a little lamb. Pay the money honestly. Wasn't this role change a little too fast? Looking at you, I don't think you can get up and call the police. I can help you. Duo shook his legs and called the police with the phone on the table. Then he hung up the phone and said, "I'll wait obediently. I won't run away. I hit you just now. It's a fact. Of course, I'll admit it. I'll pay for all of your medical expenses, not a single cent less." He swung his legs and chuckled. "Perhaps you don't understand, but it doesn't matter. I'm clear that I'm here for the trial. I didn't expect to be the king here, but you made me unhappy the moment I arrived. Even until I leave, you'll still be unhappy. From today onwards, I'll send you money every month. I'll give you 90% of the money I earn every month. I just need to survive. But on the other hand, I will come to teach you a lesson every month. You should be thankful for the laws of this world. When it comes to disputes like this, apart from settling the financial matters, you are not allowed to meet in private to avoid unnecessary harm. Otherwise, I would have come twice a day. But once a month is enough for me." He grinned and said, "There's no need to be so scared. Your injuries are all superficial. At most, you'll feel some pain in your muscles and bones. You'll recover in 3 to 7 days, or at most half a month. I estimate that other than the first 3 to 4 days of inactivity, you'll barely be able to work after that." "Ha, I'm being considerate, aren't I?" The whole family looked at Duo in horror. They really didn't understand. What kind of monster was this? He paid the money so that he could come and beat us up every month. Was it necessary? What was wrong with this person's brain? There was a rumbling sound outside. The inspector had arrived. Duo grinned happily and said, "I'm a man of my word. I'll actively cooperate and work hard to earn money to pay for your medical expenses and buy medicine. But beating you up every month is also the same because this will be the only joy in life that I look forward to in the future. Do you understand? I'll continue. Now, it's no longer a matter between your father and me. It's a matter between your family and me. So, even if your father recovers and is discharged from the hospital, I'll continue to come and pay for your medical expenses. What I'm doing is at most civil and public security. It's not considered criminal at all. I'm still clear on this point. And now, including the law inspector, everyone knows that I'm being blackmailed. It's just that they can't punish your behavior. But no matter what, even if the law is involved, it's reasonable to be on my side. To be honest, I hope that this kind of life can last a little longer. The feeling of punching flesh is too satisfying. The law can't punish people like you. It's easy for me to find evidence to clear my name, but it's too easy for you. I can find evidence and leave in minutes. I don't need to pay you. But if I leave, you can still continue to live as if nothing happened. That's too lenient for you. I'd rather suffer a little and stay here for a little longer than let you live comfortably. Blackmail me? Hee hee, you don't know who you've blackmailed. Duo crossed his legs and sat on the highest chair. He looked down at the family lying on the ground and snorted. TSK TSK, TSK TSK. Isn't it just a competition to see who's more heartless and unreasonable? Don't worry, son of a bitch, I'm worse than you in this aspect. There was a knock on the door. The inspector had arrived. Duo stood up and opened the door. He nodded and bowed with a face full of regret. Sir, I really couldn't control my temper and beat them up. It's my fault, I repent, I apologize, I'm willing to compensate, I'll take responsibility until the end. The head inspector obviously knew the whole story. How could he not know that Zhou Xiaoduo had been blackmailed? He expressed his deep understanding of the couldn't control himself and beat them up incident. He sighed and said, but according to the regulations, the new injuries you caused will have to be added to the previous medical compensation. This will greatly delay the deadline for your claim. It's quite disadvantageous for you. After that, he sighed again, full of sympathy. Zhou Xiaoduo nodded like he was pounding garlic. People have to be responsible for their own actions. I beat them up, of course, I have to take responsibility. In the future, when I earn money, I'll only keep enough for myself to eat. The rest will be given to them. Sigh, why was I so impulsive just now? It's my fault that I couldn't control myself and beat them up. It's my fault, I have to pay the price. The inspector really couldn't bear to see him like this. Sigh, this child was really too honest and too pitiful. In this world, kind people were often bullied. He patted Zhou Xiaoduo's shoulder comfortingly and began the normal investigation. The family blamed him in unison. Zhou Xiaoduo confessed and sincerely apologized. Thus, the civil investigation ended. Zhou Xiaoduo was responsible for the compensation. The deadline for the claim settlement was extended by another 4 months. When they heard the extension, the family's faces turned ashen. Zhou Xiaoduo looked terrified as he sent the inspector out. He nodded and bowed as he watched the inspector walk away. Then, he straightened his back and looked at the family with a smug look. He sneered. I'll come back next month. Looking forward to it. Anyway, I'm really looking forward to it. We still have a long time ahead of us. We still have a lot of youth to squander. Come on, let's have fun. We still have a lot of time anyway. Zhou Xiaoduo raised his head proudly and hummed a song as he walked away, in front of the screen. Li Changjiang was completely dumbfounded at this moment. He looked at the screen in disbelief. He turned his head stiffly and looked at his wife in a daze. He opened his mouth but no words came out. Hu Ruoyun lowered her head and pinched the space between her eyebrows with 2 fingers. She was also speechless. Both of them didn't expect Zhou Xiaoduo to have such methods. And it seemed like this was just the beginning. This student of yours doesn't seem to only have such methods. He still has a follow-up. Li Changjiang racked his brains to find the right words. Finally, he said, this way of dealing with things is really weird. This is the first time I've seen something like this in years. I don't understand. He wasn't lying. This was the first time he had seen something like this. Throughout the long history of the Yanwu Empire, there had been many martial artists who had been evaluated. Zhou Xiaoduo's method of dealing with things could be said to be the first since the beginning of time. Hu Ruoyun lowered her head and laughed dryly. Even she didn't expect this student of hers to have such an extreme side. He's a little unusual. Li Changjiang clicked his tongue in wonder. The screen continued. Although Zhou Xiaoduo's method was unexpected, it obviously couldn't be used as a basis to judge the end of this investigation. Only by completely ending this incident could the evaluation be concluded. This was the hard and fast standard. Either the other party would let go, or Zhou Xiaoduo would finish dealing with things, or the Illusion Inspection Bureau would judge Zhou Xiaoduo to be innocent. However, Zhou Xiaoduo clearly had no intention of appealing. Moreover, from the looks of it, even if the other party wanted to let go, Zhou Xiaoduo wouldn't let go himself. And now, both of them couldn't see how he was going to deal with things. Time passed very quickly. The second month passed. Today, it was Zhou Xiaoduo's day to collect his salary again. On the screen, Zhou Xiaoduo seemed very strange since morning. Sighs, grievances, regret, anger, and various other emotions intertwined on his face. He looked really pitiful. Those who heard it felt sad and those who saw it pitied him. What a pitiful child. Chapter 9. The boss and his colleagues all knew what had happened to Zhou Xiaoduo. They tried their best to sympathize with him, but there was nothing they could do. They could only sigh in their hearts. At noon, Zhou Xiaoduo took an afternoon off, which was rare. He ordered a simple dish and took a bottle of the cheapest wine. He drank alone, sighing and groaning. The fat boss walked over and sighed softly. He comforted him, "Xiaoduo, you have to be open-minded about everything. 9 out of 10 things don't go your way in life. For you to encounter such a shameless person, it's a natural disaster. Fortunately, you're still young, so it'll be over soon. How about this, I'll give you an extra 500 yuan this month. It won't be counted as your salary or bonus. This money won't be recorded in the file, so no one will be able to check it. You can use this money to improve your life. Uncle's ability is limited, so this is all I can help you." Zhou Xiaoduo said in a low voice, "Thank you, boss." He pursed his lips tightly, tears rolling in his eyes. Finally, he couldn't help but roar, "What kind of world is this? Why is it so hard to be a good person? Where is the justice?" Everyone who heard this trembled in their hearts. Yes, why was it so hard to be a good person? If people had a choice, they would naturally want to be a good person. However, the world was unpredictable, and there were always too many things that didn't go as planned. Zhou Xiaoduo took his salary and walked out of the door. Everyone looked at his desolate and bleak back and sighed, "What a good child. Why did he meet such a family? A family of scumbags, from old to young. To put it bluntly, I really want to kill that family. The young man saved your life. It's fine if you don't thank him, but you repay his kindness with ingratitude. You poured a basin of dirty water on your savior. You're despicable, shameless, and heartless." Everyone was indignant. Off-screen, Li Chengjiang was flabbergasted. He said, This guy has been acting since early in the morning. You can imagine what he wants to do. I say, Ruoyan, you even gave them acting lessons? This is too natural." Hu Ruoyan growled angrily and shamelessly, "You can do whatever you want. You're not done yet." Then, he looked at Zhou Xiaoduo, who was so engrossed in his performance on the screen. He couldn't help but rub his eyebrows. She really couldn't figure out where this guy got his wicked sense of humor from. He could have solved the problem through normal channels, but he had to take a different approach. Even if it was in an illusion, he still wanted to vent his anger. Well, it should be said that he had vented a lot of his anger. He had vented all his anger. 4 words suddenly flashed through Hu Ruoyan's mind, but she immediately suppressed them, not allowing herself to think about it. However, these 4 words were becoming clearer and clearer. The aura of a devil. For a gentleman to take revenge, 10 years is not too late. For a villain to take revenge, he takes his revenge from morning till night. For a devil to take revenge, he is not afraid of being late, but he is afraid of not being ruthless enough. After all, what the latter sought was never justice and fairness, but only for his own thoughts to be clear. In the illusion, Zhou Xiaoduo, who reeked of alcohol, came to the door of that family. He knocked for a long time, but there was no answer. It was the neighbor who opened the door and told him, "They have all gone to the hospital." Then, he looked at Zhou Xiaoduo's tired and dejected look with some sympathy and said, "They said that you are a villain, and that you came to their house to beat them up. Little brother, do you want to come in and drink some water? You look very tired." Zhou Xiaoduo smiled bitterly, "Your neighbor's family said that I'm a villain. Aren't you afraid that I'm really a villain and open the door to robbers? I've been their neighbor for several years. How could I not know their character? Little brother, I don't dare to say that I know everything about you, but I know a general idea. You're a villain." "Ha, what kind of villain would save someone?" The neighbor sighed, "You're being blackmailed after saving someone. This world." Zhou Xiaoduo sighed and said, "Thank you, but I won't go in. A man can't live without integrity. I'll do what I promised. Today is my payday. It's fine if they're not at home. I'll go to the hospital to send them the money." As he said that, he turned around and walked out in a lonely manner. Watching Zhou Xiaoduo leave, the neighbor's face was full of resentment. "I can't believe that I'm neighbors with such a family. What a shame." In the hospital, the family was lingering in the ward. The doctors and nurses were there, and they looked at the family with strange eyes. Especially when they heard them talking about how domineering, unreasonable, and beating Zhou Xiaoduo over and over again, the doctors looked at them with more and more disgust. "You're a family of scum. You said that he beat you up. You said that he went to your house alone and beat your whole family up. Who would believe that? We can't wait for that young man to teach you a lesson. Isn't that natural? Your family is heartless and unscrupulous. You blackmailed your savior. Isn't it natural to beat you up? If it's not illegal to beat people up, do you know that I'd want to beat you up too? How dare you come to the hospital and wait? You're talking nonsense. You're polluting the air here." Footsteps sounded. Under the sympathetic eyes of the doctors and nurses, Zhou Xiaoduo walked in dispirited and reeking of alcohol. He said tiredly, "I went to your house, but there was no one there. I had to send the money to the hospital. Fortunately, you're still here." The old man's son snorted and said, "Put the money down and you can leave." Hearing that, everyone's expression became even more strange. Are people who blackmail people so righteous? Zhou Xiaoduo seemed to be very angry with someone's attitude. His face suddenly turned red, but he suppressed it. He walked in front of the man, took out the money, and handed it over, saying, "Count it." The old man's son couldn't help but take a step back and said, "Just put it on the table." Zhou Xiaoduo took a step forward and said, "You have to count how much money I brought. I need proof of the amount. I don't trust your family." The doctors and nurses nodded silently. That was how it should be. With how shameless that family was, they might come up with other tricks. It was entirely possible that they would refuse to accept the money or say that the amount was wrong. The man hesitated for a moment and reached out to take the money, saying, "Okay." He didn't take it. When he looked up, he saw Zhou Xiaoduo staring at him. He was panting heavily and reeking of alcohol. His eyes were bloodshot. He suppressed his anger and asked, "Don't you feel guilty for blackmailing me like this?" The man was shocked and said, "What? What did you say?" Zhou Xiaoduo was already reeking of alcohol. He shouted angrily, "Don't you feel guilty? Not even a little bit?" The old man's son was stunned for a moment and said angrily, "You scum of society, scum of the world." Before he could finish his sentence, Zhou Xiaoduo suddenly exploded. He threw a stack of money at the man's face. Then, Zhou Xiaoduo pounced on him with a broken face and started to beat him up. He cried as he hit him. "Don't you feel guilty? Don't you feel guilty? I saved your father. I saved your father's life. You blackmailed me. You said I was the perpetrator and blackmailed me until now. I wanted to be a good person. I was doing a good deed. Why are you doing this to me? Why are you blackmailing me? You know the truth. You still want to call me scum of society? Scum of the world? Who is it? Who is scum? Who is it? Why? Answer me. Why? Why? Why is it so hard to be a good person in this world?" Zhou Xiaoduo's roar of grief and indignation was perfectly articulated, but his movements were incomparably fast. Peng, 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 he knocked the opponent to the ground with a few punches and kicks. After punching and kicking for a while, he charged towards the others, continuing to roar in grief and indignation while punching and kicking, attacking fiercely. The old lady who was taking care of the old man on the hospital bed had just rushed over while shouting, but she was slapped by Zhou Xiaoduo. She flew 3 meters away and fainted under the bed. Puff puff puff. Listening to the extremely sad and angry roar, some of the emotional doctors' and nurses' eyes turned red. Just how far did she have to push him to make a good young man who was passionate about saving people collapse to the point where he was mentally deranged? Yes, why was it so hard to be a good person in this world? Even though the family was being beaten up, no one could feel a shred of sympathy. There were only two words in their hearts. They deserved it. Even a few doctors and nurses deliberately slowed down their movements. When Zhuo Xiaoduo was almost done, they surrounded him and tried to stop him. Don't hit people. Don't hit. Ugh. Looking at the family on the ground, which had been completely swollen, with bruises all over their bodies, the doctors' and nurses' eyebrows twitched. So fast. How could it be over so quickly? Although everyone felt that this beating was really satisfying, but this beating was too heavy, too fast. Listening to the cracking sounds, there should be more than one bone breaking. I hit people again. Zhuo Xiaoduo looked at his hand absent-mindedly and muttered to himself, I just want to be a good person. He turned around blankly and asked blankly, why? Can a guy who blackmailed his savior confidently say that his savior is the scum of society? Scum of the world. What is wrong with this world? The doctors and nurses comforted him softly, but they were a little worried. Now that he was injured, it would be difficult to deal with. This young man was too impulsive. Some of the emotional nurses' eyes turned red. Too pitiful, this child was too pitiful. He was so hot-blooded, but he encountered such a disgusting and filthy thing. Zhuo Xiaoduo cried out in despair, what is wrong with this world? Is there no place to reason? The media, the newspapers, the television, the reporters, the legal system, the leaders, why don't they open their eyes and take a look? I'm a good person. I'm a good person. A series of desperate roars sounded like a series of reminders. A nurse's eyes suddenly lit up. She took out her phone and dialed a string of numbers. Yes, perhaps only the media could help this poor young man now. Chapter 10. The inspection team arrived soon after. Seeing that it was Zhuo Xiaoduo and his family again, the few inspectors had a strange expression on their faces. They began to investigate the incident. The situation was clear at a glance. The doctors and nurses enthusiastically stepped forward to testify. This family has gone too far. They're trash. This young man took the initiative to deliver the money, but the family called him scum of society and scum of the world. The young man was impulsive when he heard that. Sigh, it's pardonable. If it were me, I'd be impulsive too. He saved people but was blackmailed and called scum. Who's the scum here? A doctor was filled with righteous indignation. That family scolded Zhuo Xiaoduo first. They scolded Zhuo Xiaoduo so harshly that he exploded. A nurse bravely testified. That's right. This family has gone too far. They're such bullies. How can a person do something like that? They're too wicked. A patient in the same ward testified. The young man seems to have been drinking. Sigh, who wouldn't be worried after encountering such a troublesome incident? Drinking to drown one's sorrows is even worse. Another nurse said, if I were to encounter such a troublesome incident, I might just go crazy. However, Zhuo Xiaoduo seemed to have been too ruthless this time. 2 of the family members had their bones broken in more than one place. Based on sentencing alone, it was enough to constitute a crime. In light of this, the inspection team continued to investigate and collect evidence. As the incident escalated, the media got involved. Reporters began to interview relevant people. Faced with the interview, the family's neighbor stepped forward. On the day of the incident, the young man came to deliver money to their family. They weren't at home, so the young man went to the hospital to deliver money. I remember clearly that the young man said that a man can't live without trust. What a good young man. Why did they have to scold him? Does this family have any conscience? Pfft, their family has long lost their conscience. They were beaten up. Serves them right. I didn't hit them too hard. It's not a big deal even if I beat them to death. I got rid of evil for the people. I'm their neighbor. Logically speaking, I shouldn't cause trouble for myself. However, when I saw the poor young man and heard what he said, my conscience won't allow me to keep silent. This family is simply a family of scum. The investigation led to the hotel where Zhou Xiaoduo worked. The young man is very diligent when he works. Isn't it because he wants to earn more money and get rid of that family as soon as possible? The lady boss said. Sigh, this young man's mood has become more and more depressed this month. He secretly cried a few times. But he always rushes to do the work. He's not picky about the dirty and tiring work. There's nothing to say about his conduct. A colleague said. He did drink a little before he went out, but his emotions were still stable. Did he hit someone? It couldn't be. His emotions were very stable at that time. Could it be that he was bullied again and couldn't take it anymore? Such an honest child wouldn't hit someone unless he was forced into a corner. Besides, even a rabbit bites when it's cornered. If it were someone else, don't even talk about hitting someone, I think it's understandable that they would kill someone. The boss said. Before the young man left, he even asked me why it's so hard to be a good person in this world. The boss sighed and looked at the reporter's camera. Yes, I also want to ask, in this world, why is it so difficult to be a good person? He was trying to save people out of kindness, yet he was blackmailed and blackmailed. He was forced to deliver money to their doorstep, and he was even humiliated and bullied. Should a good person endure all this? Humans always have a limit. How can they endure when they can't take it anymore? Although it's wrong to hit people, this time, I support the young man hitting people. I support him too. Me too. He hit the right person. Good hit. They said in unison. Some passers-by were indignant when they heard about the incident. What's wrong with hitting them? Good hit. He hit them too lightly. He should hit them. If it were me, I would also want to ask, what's wrong with this world? Why is it so hard to be a good person? Soon, the reporters sorted out the collected information and published it in the newspaper. On the front page of the local newspaper, there was a big bold and black headline, "Is it so hard to be a good person in this world?" After the question mark, there were 3 huge exclamation marks that were particularly eye-catching. There were 3 photos below. The first photo was of Zhou Xiaoduo muttering to himself with a broken face, "I just want to be a good person, why is it so hard?" Caption, "The kind young man who was blackmailed after saving people." The second photo was of a young and beautiful nurse surrounded by a group of angels in white. She faced the camera and asked doubtfully, "Is it so hard to be a good person in this world?" The third photo was of the boss sighing. What's wrong with this world? The following was a description of the entire incident. At the end of the related article, the reporter wrote, "Now, Zhou Xiaoduo, who saved people, is still locked up in the inspection bureau because he hit people. We don't know what fate awaits this young man. We also don't know how this incident will end. As for the follow-up of this incident, we will wait and see, because we believe that in this world, there will always be beauty and justice. We also believe that being a good person is not as difficult as you think. We await the verdict. A fair verdict." As soon as the article was published, it immediately caused an uproar. Such an ugly thing actually happened in broad daylight in a civilized society. Especially now, the young man who was kind enough to save her was locked up in the police station. The public was raging and resentment was boiling. This is a disgrace to our entire city, a great disgrace. Please give justice to the kind-hearted man. Please tell us that being a good person is not difficult in this world. Many people simply ran to the entrance of the inspection bureau to protest. Why can those scumbags get away with it? Why do they have to lock up good people? Not giving good people a chance, what kind of world is this? Hurry up and release him. Don't let good people be bitterly disappointed, bleeding and crying. The crowd's turbulence became more and more intense. Finally, the local government was alerted and actively intervened to investigate the incident. Although the incident had happened more than 2 months ago, under the strong intervention of the relevant departments, the truth came to light in just 2 days. Even the real culprit was found. All kinds of evidence showed that Zhou Xiaoduo saved people out of kindness, but then he was blackmailed by that family, which led to the situation today. The people were full of the most sincere sympathy for a kind-hearted young man. Even when they saw Zhou Xiaoduo's emotional breakdown and crazily beating people in the hospital, they did not feel angry or even disgusted. As for that family, from old to young, who were beaten up by Zhou Xiaoduo and sent to the hospital, no one sympathized with them at all. Instead, they were shouting that they deserved it. Such human scumbags deserved to be beaten up. All parties were calling for the immediate release of Zhou Xiaoduo. That night, the incident was on the evening news. The whole city was in an uproar. We want to know that being a good person is not difficult. Please tell us that being a good person is not difficult. Why hide the family's information? Let's expose them. I know, this family is. The incident was completely publicized. The family's name was exposed to the world. Facing the angry crowd that rushed into the ward every day, the family lay on the hospital bed, trembling and speechless. We were beaten so badly, can't you see? The person who beat us is a hero. What kind of world is this? Countless people angrily demanded, release the hero. Release the kind-hearted person. Punish this family severely. Facing the overwhelming public opinion, Zhou Xiaoduo was finally released. When Zhou Xiaoduo walked out, he received a hero's welcome. Countless media reporters and hundreds of people gathered at the entrance of the inspection bureau to welcome him. When they saw him come out, everyone cheered in unison. Justice finally triumphed over evil. The hero was released. Zhou Xiaoduo seemed to be very moved. Snot and tears flowed down his face. I'm free. I'm not the murderer. I've been cleared. He looked as if he was in a dream and could not believe it. The crowd was sad and shouted together, "You're free. You're fine." Zhou Xiaoduo's tears flowed down his face and his whole body trembled. Finally, he suppressed his emotions to the extreme and said, I've been wronged for so long, how can I beat them? Everyone was silent in an instant. He still wanted to beat them up. A reporter coughed awkwardly. Zhou Xiaoduo, you. Calm down, don't be impulsive. Zhou Xiaoduo roared in grief and anger, I must avenge them. Suddenly, he ran out. The direction was the direction of the hospital where the family was. His face was filled with anxiety, grief and indignation, and impatience. He knew that the trial was about to end. He was afraid that he would not be able to beat them up if he was late. Suddenly, the image froze. The trial ended. The image froze. It was Zhou Xiaoduo's unsatisfied face. His face was full of impatience. And his tightly clenched fists. The trial ended. The image froze. Li Changjiang and Hu Ruoyun looked at each other. The husband and wife had a strange feeling at the same time. It was a feeling of infinite chaos in the wind. I forgot to ask for votes in the previous chapter. I'm so angry. I'm so angry. I'll say a few more words in this chapter. Recommendation votes, recommendation votes, recommendation votes. Important words must be said 3 times. Chapter 11. Zhou Xiaoduo had been inside for more than 2 months, but he had only been in front of the screen for half an hour. However, it was this half an hour that made Li Changjiang and his wife feel indescribable. There was a subtle emotion that was hard to describe. Even though a long time had passed, he still hadn't woken up from his confusion. This Sua Xiaoduo was really a weirdo. He doesn't take the usual path. Li Changjiang sighed. This kid's personality is really weird. He's different from others. He's a little vengeful. He's the kind of person. Li Changjiang thought for a while and said slowly. He's the kind of person who, if you make me feel uncomfortable, I'll make you feel even more uncomfortable. Even if I have to spend time and energy, I'll definitely make you feel even more uncomfortable. This kind of person. This personality is really. He took a few breaths and said with a toothache. It's hard to describe. Anyway, this is the first time I've seen it. It's the first time in my life. Hu Ruoyun coughed. She didn't say the 4 words in her heart out loud. She only said, but he passed this test. He first showed helplessness and admitted his mistake. In fact, it was to pave the way for the next step, which was even more ruthless. I think he should have thought of every aspect thoroughly and made use of everything. Whether it was the public's anger or the sympathy and empathy of the doctors, nurses, bosses, colleagues, neighbors, etc., he didn't leave out a single bit. In the end, when the media intervened, the overall situation was set. Even more than that. From the beginning when he was blackmailed, he had already planned everything. He didn't make any excuses. It wasn't that he didn't have any way to explain. Instead, he was worried that he would be blackmailed and unable to carry out his plan. It would be difficult for him to take revenge completely. Li Changjiang shook his head helplessly. This kind of personality is very strange. It's a little evil. Evil. The words that Hu Ruoyun had been holding back were spoken out by Li Changjiang. Hu Ruoyun sighed and said, maybe he thought that dealing with this family in the normal way would be too easy for them. When the matter is over and time has passed, not many people will remember it. But by doing this, he can make this family unable to raise their heads and make a comeback in this society. It's really a little too cruel. Li Changjiang said indifferently, don't you think that this kind of person deserves to be punished for his crimes? Hu Ruoyun sighed and said, so, your emotions are also affected. Li Changjiang smiled bitterly. The two of them stared at the frozen screen together. The Heaven and Earth Network's evaluation had not come out yet. Both of them were looking forward to it. Given Zhuo Xiaoduo's unique performance, he wondered what kind of evaluation he would receive if he were to be ranked first in the Heaven and Earth Network's 3 touches and 5 reviews. Hu Ruoyun, in particular, was vaguely worried. Her previous confidence had long disappeared, and she was even a little afraid to look. This evaluation would follow Zhuo Xiaoduo for life. In a flash, the frozen screen of the Heaven and Earth Network began to change. Circles of ripples rippled out, layer by layer. The evaluation was about to come out. Li Changjiang felt his hand tighten. It was his wife who was holding his wrist so tightly that it actually hurt. He turned to look at his wife and saw that Hu Ruoyun's eyes were fixed on the screen, unblinking and unusually focused. He could not help but sigh and pat the back of his wife's hand. Don't worry. Not only did Hu Ruoyun not feel at ease, but she held his wrist even tighter. The ripples suddenly spread out, and from the depths of the screen, 4 words suddenly spun out. At this moment, Hu Ruoyun's body was a little stiff. The 4 words, from small to large, finally stopped at the center of the screen. The moment they caught sight of it, they were shocked. Li Changjiang's eyes widened in an instant. Hu Ruoyun even exclaimed, and immediately said angrily, this is unfair. This evaluation is too unfair. Why did you give such an evaluation? Zhuo Xiaoduo did nothing wrong, and that family deserved it. Why did you give Xiaoduo such an evaluation? Is it wrong to punish evil and promote good? Li Changjiang's face became more and more distorted. Wife, gently. Gently, it hurts, it hurts. In her excitement, Hu Ruoyun had used too much strength and twisted Li Changjiang's wrist. Li Changjiang's wrist was bruised. However, the 4 words on the screen did not move, and did not change because of Hu Ruoyun's anger. Those 4 words were shockingly heterodox demon heart. Only these 4 words, and there was no evaluation. There was no A, B, C, or D, nothing. This is unfair. Hu Ruoyun's beautiful face flushed red, and she slapped the table. I demand a new evaluation. Li Changjiang sighed helplessly. This thing is not up to us to decide. Hu Ruoyun gasped for breath. It was obvious that she was still restless. Li Changjiang sighed and said, although this evaluation is slightly biased, ordinary people can't see it. When he crosses the thorny road of life and death and achieves better results, he will appear in the eyes of the higher-ups. You don't have to worry so much. Hu Ruoyun said angrily, what do you mean don't have to worry? Don't you know that at that time, he will be assigned a position and job? With such an initial evaluation, how can there be a good position for Xiao Duo? What if he meets a biased person who sees these 4 words and directly arranges him to be in the front line? Do you think the term, cannon fodder, is just for show? She stared at her husband, somewhat confused. Li Changjiang, every child who comes out of this school is like our own child. When did you become so cold-blooded? Have you been a principal for so long? Li Changjiang sighed softly, speechless for a long time. To him, his wife at this moment was too emotional to be understood. He rubbed the space between his eyebrows and muttered, Ruoyun, we have been through a lot as observers. Don't you know that this evaluation is not excessive? Do you really need me to explain it to you in detail? Hu Ruoyun snorted and stared at him, obviously waiting for him to continue. Li Changjiang said helplessly, did you really not realize that Zhou Xiaoduo's goal from the beginning was to make that family unable to make a comeback? Everything he did was to pave the way for this ultimate goal. And from the beginning, he had set that extreme goal. According to how ordinary people deal with things, it would be enough to absolve oneself of the crime. But Zhou Xiaoduo did not intend to do that from the beginning. Just like what you said just now, he used the most ruthless way to deal with it. He did not intend to let this family live a good life, even if he ended the trial and left, even if he knew that it was just a virtual world and that he would never see it again. Li Changjiang smiled bitterly. But he still chose the most ruthless way from the beginning. He used the most extreme way to deal with this matter, and then pushed forward step by step, leaving no way for the target to survive. Although this family's actions were despicable and deceitful, in the end, was their crime really unforgivable? In the end, it was just that their human nature was dark and their moral character was low. But with the clamor of public opinion, this family was completely exposed, and there was no way back to speak of. Sigh, this kind of method. Li Changjiang sighed. Unorthodox methods, resolute demonic heart, this evaluation is not excessive. Hu Ruoyun hesitated for a long time, and finally sighed and muttered, this child has just been suppressed for too long. On the other side, just as Zhou Xiaoduo was filled with excitement and wanted to beat up that family, the trial came to an abrupt end. A certain someone, still somewhat dissatisfied, stepped out of the heaven and earth pagoda and saw Hu Ruoyun and Li Changjiang standing in front of him. Zhou Xiaoduo instinctively quivered, and immediately stood at attention, and said obediently, hello, headmaster, teacher Hu. Hu Ruoyun had a complicated look in her eyes. She said, you passed the trial. Zhou Xiaoduo looked simple and honest. He said, I passed, and it was only the first touch. Although it was difficult, it was not too much. Hu Ruoyun snorted. She said, what did you encounter? It was not too difficult, but it was still somewhat difficult, right? Zhou Xiaoduo said naively, it was really not a big deal. I was just blackmailed, and then I thought of a way to clear my name. As long as the result is good, the little twists and turns in the process are not important. He smiled sincerely and even scratched his head. He said, I also remembered teacher's teachings, and handled everything with tolerance. In life, most things do not go according to one's will. Think about the other party's position more, and the human heart is made of flesh. His body was straight, and his face was honest. He was smiling, and there was even a hint of shyness on his face. He really looked like a sunny young man, harmless to both humans and animals. His attitude was really a role model for the students of the new era. Hu Ruoyun's mouth twitched. She glanced at her husband from the corner of her eyes, and saw Li Changjiang's expressionless face as the bottom of a pot. She took a deep breath and said, "You did well." Zhuo Xiaoduo said obediently, "It's all thanks to teacher's teachings." Hu Ruoyun suppressed the overwhelming feeling in her heart. She said, "Get ready. I'll take you to the warrior class to report." "Okay." Zhuo Xiaoduo agreed. He turned around and ran away in a lively and cute manner. He even jumped high. Yi. Chapter 12. Hu Ruoyun turned around and saw that Li Changjiang could no longer keep a straight face and finally broke down. He looked at her speechlessly, as if asking, "Is this the honest, smart, cute, persevering, and good student you were talking about?" Hu Ruoyun covered her face. Li Changjiang let out a long and meaningful sigh. "What a talent!" Hu Ruoyun snorted, her eyes unfriendly. "Don't be so sarcastic." Looking at Zhuo Xiaoduo's disappearing figure, Li Changjiang suddenly remembered something. His whole body trembled, and he frowned. No, I seem to have overlooked something." Hu Ruoyun was speechless. "What's wrong?" Li Changjiang frowned, quickly recalling in his mind. Finally, a hint of understanding flashed in his eyes, and the shock in his heart could not be concealed. He murmured, "Is it the first time?" "The first time he gave me money," Zhuo Xiaoduo said something. "Did he say, 'I'm here for the trial anyway'? Is there such a sentence?" Hu Ruoyun also suddenly realized. Yes, there is such a sentence. It's funny that I didn't realize it at that time." The two of them looked at each other and saw the shock in each other's eyes. Li Changjiang said in a low voice, "It's normal for him to remember what he experienced after coming out. But entering this illusion is an instinctive illusion. It's impossible to enter with a clear mind and complete memory. In the instinctive illusion, only a person's most pure instinctive reaction is left. That's why there's the saying of 3 touches and 5 comments, because this is a human's natural reaction." But Zhuo Xiaoduo obviously remembers. Hu Ruoyun also became serious. "So?" Li Changjiang reached out to grab the phone on the table, looking surprised. "This matter must be reported. If Zhuo Xiaoduo really has the ability to resist the instinctive illusion, then his spiritual power has reached a level beyond that of a normal martial artist. He's a high-quality talent." "Don't." Hu Ruoyun grabbed Li Changjiang's hand and hurriedly asked, "Who else could have seen Zhuo Xiaoduo's trial other than you?" Li Changjiang stared blankly for a moment, then said, "In this school, only I have this authority." Hu Ruoyun's eyes lit up. "In other words, no one else can see it except you?" "Yeah." Li Changjiang was puzzled. "What do you want to say?" "This matter must not be reported." Hu Ruoyun grabbed Li Changjiang's cell phone and said, "Reporting it will only increase the chances of Xiao Duo being exposed. If he really is a high-quality talent in the field of mental strength, one more person knowing will only increase the risk." Li Changjiang said hesitantly, "If Xiao Duo has this genius record, even if he crosses the thorny path in the future, the higher-ups will still consider him more carefully when they find out about his heretical demonic heart evaluation. There are still benefits." "No. When he naturally grows to that level, you can report this matter to the higher-ups. The result will be the same." Hu Ruoyun did not give in. Once the genius record leaks out, it will cause Xiao Duo to face countless risks. The possibility of him dying is too high. "I can't let my student take this risk." Li Changjiang frowned. "You don't trust." Hu Ruoyun did not give in. "Can you trust him?" Li Changjiang was defeated by his wife's gaze. He said, "Okay." Hu Ruoyun asked aggressively, "What's okay?" Li Changjiang said dejectedly, "It's okay if you don't report it." Hu Ruoyun snorted and walked out. "At least you know what's good for you." Li Changjiang watched Hu Ruoyun leave. For a long time, his expression was uncertain. Thinking of Zhou Xiaoduo's actions before leaving, he could not help but snort. Seeing that he was the only one left in the huge office, he immediately relaxed. He walked to the window and saw that Hu Ruoyun had already trotted away. Only then did he truly feel that the pressure had completely disappeared, and his whole body relaxed. He took a deep breath and then jumped high into the air with a pu sound, twisting his butt. Yi. After lunch. Warrior Class 9. Hu Ruoyun brought Zhou Xiaoduo to report. The door was just over there. The teacher inside did not come out to greet them, and there was no handover process. The path of a warrior, the door of a warrior, had to be walked and opened by oneself. 7 or 8 meters away from the door, Hu Ruoyun stopped and turned to look at Zhou Xiaoduo beside her. She revealed a loving smile. "Xiaoduo, go. Walk your path and open the door of a warrior that belongs to you." The rims of her eyes were already a little red. Looking at Zhou Xiaoduo's young and tender face, Hu Ruoyun felt as if she had raised a chick that was about to fly away from her. She was reluctant to part with him. But she could not stop him. She knew how much Zhou Xiaoduo had been looking forward to this day. Zhou Xiaoduo was silent for a moment, then said, "Yes." He turned and walked towards the door step by step. Hu Ruoyun stood still and watched Zhou Xiaoduo's back as he walked further and further away. Finally, she said in a trembling voice, "Xiaoduo, no matter how much you suffer, you must make the great leap before the age of 20. Zhou Xiaoduo did not stop walking forward, as if he did not hear her. After 10 steps, he was already standing in front of the door. He paused for a moment, then suddenly turned around and ran to Hu Ruoyun's side. He hugged her as if she was his mother who was sending him off. He buried his head on Hu Ruoyun's shoulder and did not speak for a long time. Hu Ruoyun smiled with relief and patted Zhou Xiaoduo's shoulder. "Go, child. You're still in the same school. It's not like you won't see each other again." Although she said that, she was already a little choked up. It was as if time was flowing back in her eyes. Scenes of Zhou Xiaoduo's efforts over the past 6 years flashed before her eyes. After a long while, Zhou Xiaoduo finally raised his head and said seriously, "Thank you, Teacher Hu." He took 2 steps back and bowed deeply. "I will never forget you, Teacher Hu. Please take care." Hu Ruoyun took a deep breath and tried to smile. She nodded and did not say anything else. Zhou Xiaoduo turned around and walked step by step to the door of the 9th class. He did not look back. Hu Ruoyun's eyes were blurred by tears. Her heart was filled with reluctance. She looked at Zhou Xiaoduo's back and suddenly felt that something was wrong. However, she did not know what it was. The only thought she had was that Xiaoduo was wearing a retro robe today. This robe? It looks like a Taoist robe. Hu Ruoyun was a little confused. Zhou Xiaoduo. What is he trying to do? Why is he wearing a Taoist robe to report to the new class? In the 9th class of samurai warriors. The class teacher, Qin Fangyang, had a resolute face as he explained the theory of martial arts as if nothing had happened. From time to time, he would demonstrate some martial arts moves to the students. It was as if he was not surprised by the two's arrival. However, the samurai students sitting on the futons below seemed to be a little absent-minded. Today's arrival of a new student was not a secret at all. It was also not a rare thing. What made everyone interested and eager to know was what kind of person this guy, who was known as the #1 martial disciple in 2nd middle school, was. After all, it was rare to see someone repeat a full 5 years as a martial disciple. If you include the 1 year in the regular school year, it would be a full 6 years. What kind of person could not break through to a martial warrior in 6 years? After cultivating for 6 whole years, he still refused to give up and suddenly broke through. The 35 samurai warriors in the 9th class were all very curious about the new student who was about to arrive. Among them were 2 of Zhou Xiaoduo's former classmates from the martial disciple class. Only Qin Fangyang, the experienced class teacher, was not moved at all. After all, he had sent away too many samurai students over the years. He was already used to seeing them come and go. The path of cultivation was difficult and the path forward was rugged. There was a clear difference in aptitude and effort. Although a 6-year martial disciple was rare to teacher Qin, it was not the first time he had seen one. Moreover, as a class teacher, I can't have feelings for the students. This was Qin Fangyang's motto. For many years, he had taught step by step. After teaching carefully and meticulously, he left immediately. What did other things have to do with him? At this moment, there was a sudden knock on the door. Knock knock. Qin Fangyang turned his head and glanced at it indifferently. He ignored it and continued teaching. However, the other 35 pairs of eyes all looked at the door in unison. Qin Fangyang shouted coldly, "What are you looking at? He's just a new transfer student. What's there to look at? Why do you have to knock on a martial artist's door? If he doesn't want to come in, then get out. If you don't want to listen to the class, you can also choose to get out." All the students immediately kept quiet out of fear. They all withdrew their gazes and sat upright to meditate. All the students were in awe of this strict class teacher from the bottom of their hearts. Qin Fangyang said indifferently, "A martial artist's door must be opened, smashed, or kicked open. Even if you have to fight until your head is broken and bleeding, you must open it. But if you don't even have the courage to open it yourself, then you have no hope in life." His voice was not soft. The students in the classroom heard it. The transfer student at the door should also have heard it. It also seemed that these words were specially said for the people outside the door to hear. As teacher Qin's voice stopped, the knocking on the door stopped. Qin Fangyang's expression did not change. He continued teaching. Suddenly, boom! There was a loud explosion. The classroom door was not intact after the explosion. The entire wooden door was kicked in directly. It fell to the ground in a manner of being torn apart. Instantly, dust flew everywhere. All the students exclaimed when they saw this. Even Qin Fangyang's eyebrows twitched. This student was a little domineering. "I was just saying it as an example." "You really kicked it." Feng Family's official group, 376-497-379, brothers, welcome to join. In addition, there was a disheartened shout, seeking recommendation votes. Chapter 13. Amidst the dust, a figure slowly appeared at the entrance of the classroom. The person was tall and wore a long robe, but the style of his robe seemed a little strange. He walked in shakily. A smile bloomed on the person's clean face. He bowed deeply and said politely, "Hello, Mr. Qin." "Hello, students. I'm Zhou Xiaoduo. It's my first time here, so please take care of me in the future. My personal specialty and hobby is fortune-telling and physiognomy. I think I'm quite accomplished. If anyone needs help in the future, you can come to me. I'll take money and solve problems for you. It's only 100 yuan per fortune-telling. This is a friendly price, so please don't stand on ceremony with me." Hearing such a sudden opening, the entire classroom immediately fell silent. Only the broken wooden door made creaking sounds on the ground. After a while, it was completely silent. He kicked the door open and walked in politely. Qin Fangyang turned his head and looked the new student up and down. A faint cold light flashed in his slender eyes. He said lightly, "Introduce yourself on the podium." He faintly felt that this new student seemed to be somewhat unusual. Under that seemingly respectful and polite appearance, there was a restless heart hidden. Zhuo Xiaoduo's face was still lingering with a faint smile. When he walked in, he glanced at everyone in the classroom. This was a very spacious classroom that was more than 200 square meters. There were only 35 students in the classroom, and each of them had a futon. The distance between each of them was at least 1 meter. The ceiling of the classroom was like a dome, and it was inlaid with specks of star soul stones, forming a spirit chi array. The entire classroom was filled with astral power and spiritual energy. It was really an excellent atmosphere for cultivation. The warrior class is so good. Zhuo Xiaoduo thought to himself, the warrior class doesn't have this kind of treatment. Well, if the warrior class is already so good, wouldn't the warrior class be even better? And then even higher. Thinking about it, Zhuo Xiaoduo couldn't help but have the urge to salivate. Just the star soul stone array formation at the top of the classroom was small in size, but there were so many of them. With a rough look, there were at least a few dozen of them. The cost of production, the cost of production. Gulp. He swallowed another mouthful of saliva. As the owner of the Astral Souls Stone shop, Zhuo Xiaoduo knew the value of these Astral Souls stones very well. The quality of these Astral Souls stones was not bad. Perhaps they were not of the highest quality and were far from the best quality. However, this was only the training environment of a warrior class. In particular, the Astral Souls Stone could only be used for a certain period of time. Once its energy was depleted, it would have to be replaced immediately. With so many Astral Souls Stones being used over the years, what kind of number would it be if all of the classes in the entire grade were replaced? Furthermore, the schools still had the martial arts master class, the Dragon Gate class, and other classes. How much would he lose if he added them all up? At least in Zhuo Xiaoduo's rough calculation, 1 year would be an astronomical figure. It was a super number that most people wouldn't even dare to think about. If all the Astral Souls stones in the Phoenix City Martial Arts Academy were provided by his family, then his family would have become rich long ago. Zhuo Xiaoduo instinctively thought so. At this moment, the 35 warrior students were also looking at this audacious newcomer with curiosity in their eyes. It was rare to see a transfer student directly kick the door open. It had to be said that Zhuo Xiaoduo had repeated 5 years. He was older than most of the students in the classroom at this moment. There were only 1 or 2 who looked about the same age as Zhuo Xiaoduo. Well, most of them just looked about the same age. Hearing Qin Fangyang's words, Zhuo Xiaoduo was stunned for a moment, but he didn't hesitate to agree. Yes. Come up to the podium and formally introduce yourself. Qin Fangyang's words were as indifferent as ever. Then, he walked down and gave up the podium. He stretched out his hand and gestured, "Next, it's time for your performance. Every student who enters my class will receive the same treatment. No one is an exception." He looked at Zhuo Xiaoduo's face. Most students would be slightly nervous at this step. After all, not every youth could speak in such a condescending manner in front of everyone. There were many who stuttered or were unable to say a single word. Throughout the years, there weren't many students who could calmly walk up to the podium and speak. In fact, this wasn't a big deal. After all, it was only a warrior class. Most of the students were still children, so it was difficult for them to gain much experience. Zhuo Xiaoduo nodded and strode forward, arriving at the podium in 2 steps. He was very calm. Everyone looked at Zhuo Xiaoduo, who was wearing a long gown and standing upright. They felt that this guy was a little tall and straight. What Qin Fangyang was more concerned about was that Zhuo Xiaoduo didn't seem nervous at all. He had a calm expression and couldn't help but secretly nod. In the next moment, Zhuo Xiaoduo officially opened his mouth. "Hello, everyone. My name is Zhuo Xiaoduo. I might be a little older than everyone here, so you can call me Big Brother or Boss in the future. I don't mind." Qin Fangyang raised his head immediately. Below, 35 boys and girls raised their heads at the same time and looked at this grandson on the podium with some surprise. Did they hear wrongly? A transfer student, a guy who repeated 5 years, wanted to be the boss. Wasn't he afraid that the wind would bite his tongue? Zhuo Xiaoduo smiled and said, "Everyone, I have many strengths and I know many things. If there's anything you don't understand, you can tell me. I think I can still teach you a little." Everyone, including Qin Fangyang, was speechless. As you all know, I've repeated a few years. However, because I repeated a few years, I've learned many things outside of martial arts. For example, the magical skill I mentioned before, fortune-telling. Let me tell you a secret. This magical fortune-telling ability of mine has a lot of history. Zhuo Xiaoduo's face was serious and serious. According to my research, this fortune-telling technique is a legacy of the heavenly secret sect that has been lost for 30 million years. Hearing someone's shocking words, everyone was speechless. Even the indifferent and experienced homeroom teacher Qin Fangyang almost blurted out, "Oh my God." Of course, they weren't shocked by the so-called legacy, but by the level of shamelessness of a certain someone. How thick did one's skin have to be able to boast like this? This was completely unrestrained bragging. 30 million years, you could have just said 3 billion years. Why didn't you just say that you could see life and death with a glance, and determine good or bad luck with just a few words? A little fatty below couldn't help but curl his lips. He was the first to question, "Student Zhuo, you said that your physiognomy is miraculous, but that's secondary. I've carefully collected and organized the information related to the 100 million years of history of our star spirit continent. I'm confident that I know all the super sects that once existed like the back of my hand. But I've never heard of any heaven's secret path. Are you wrong, or am I lacking in talent and knowledge that I've overlooked something?" The other students also had strange expressions on their faces. Zhuo Xiaoduo's expression didn't change in the face of the questioning. He calmly explained, "Student, don't be too full of yourself. The astral souls has gone through hundreds of millions of years of hardships. The past inheritances and civilizations were glorious and brilliant. The sects that were once glorious but eventually drowned in the river of history are as numerous as the grains of sand in the Ganges. Who can say that you know all of them? Who dares to say that you know all of them? How can you be so sure?" The little fatty wasn't convinced. He retorted, "There are limits to a person's ability. Of course, I don't dare to say that I know all the super sects and inheritances, but I know that none of the lucky ones who obtained secret inheritances would say it out loud in public. They were all afraid that others would find out, so they hid it well. No one would introduce themselves like you." Zhuo Xiaoduo chuckled and said, "Student, there are many things you don't know. In this world, the world is difficult, and life is full of ups and downs. Suffering is inevitable. In this era of great strife, no one can predict their own fortune. The people of the heavenly secret sect observe the mysteries of heaven and earth, and we can't bear to see the people suffer misfortune because they don't know their own fate. That's why we strive to guide the people. Everyone is my classmate, so you can say that the pavilion closest to the water enjoys the moonlight first, and the flowers and trees that face the sun enjoy the early spring." Cough cough cough. Qin Fangyang couldn't help but cough a few times. He said, "Student Zhuo Xiaoduo, is there anything else you want to say?" What he meant was that if there was nothing else to say, then hurry up and get lost. Zhuo Xiaoduo obviously still wanted to continue. He said frankly and with assurance, "What I said is true. Students, we can be considered to be classmates now. I am willing to divulge some heavenly secrets, to make things convenient for you, to take advantage of you. If you have any confusion in your life, if you have any uncertainty about your future work, your future in love." Zhuo Xiaoduo talked endlessly. "Do you want to know the other half of your life? Do you want to know the taste of love, the fetters of fate, the marriage of the previous life, the way to grow old together?" Zhuo Xiaoduo said resolutely, I can give you pointers. The veins on Qin Fangyang's forehead bulged. Was this a transfer student? What kind of person was this? Was he a scammer? The 35 students were also speechless. On the stage, Zhou Xiaoduo was still talking endlessly. Speaking of which, martial artists of our generation will have too many opportunities to encounter danger in the future. Dangerous situations come one after another. If there is someone who can predict and tell you in advance, you can naturally seek good fortune and avoid disaster, turning misfortune into good fortune. Qin Fangyang took a deep breath and said, Zhou Xiaoduo. Zhou Xiaoduo turned around and said respectfully, Hello, teacher. Qin Fangyang snorted and said, You can predict and predict. Physiognomy is amazing, right? Zhou Xiaoduo looked proud. Teacher, you flatter me. It's actually just a small trick that is not worth mentioning. I'm just a little more hardworking than others. I like to study ancient inheritances buried in the long river of history. Qin Fangyang's mouth twitched, revealing an unfathomable smile. He said, Then go look in the mirror. Look in the mirror. Zhou Xiaoduo was puzzled. Qin Fangyang smiled sinisterly. Look in the mirror and calculate for yourself. Will you get beaten up today? Digression. I've never written about the academy, but this book needs to be written. So, before this, I specially went to a local university to listen in for more than a month. I went to and from class to school to feel the atmosphere. The female students were so enthusiastic. If not for the fact that the head teacher was my wife's classmate. Cough cough. So, to make up for my hurt heart, please recommend me, reward me, comfort me. This chapter is not short, it's very long. It's long and full of content. So, everyone understands. Chapter 14. Zhou Xiaoduo. Stunned, he forced a smile and said, I firmly support Teacher Qin's teaching and unswervingly carry out Teacher Qin's policies. Qin Fangyang said sanctimoniously, Sigh, it has nothing to do with that. Every new student will be evaluated by the instructors before they can teach according to their aptitude. Come, let me evaluate your current combat strength. After a short while, Zhou Xiaoduo limped to the last futon in class 3. 9 with a bloody nose and a swollen face. He felt as if all the bones in his body had been dismantled and reassembled. Qin Fangyang's fists were heavy and ruthless. Zhou Xiaoduo felt as if he had been trampled by a rhinoceros. The other 35 students in the class were no longer speechless. Instead, they lowered their heads and snickered. Their shoulders were heaving up and down for a long time. Qin Fangyang stood on the podium and looked at Zhou Xiaoduo from afar. He said, Zhou Xiaoduo, what are your thoughts now? Can you calculate what I'm thinking now? Feel free to speak your mind and express your thoughts. The students in the class tried even harder to hold back their laughter. Zhou Xiaoduo stood up and said respectfully, I'm now completely in awe of Teacher Qin's cultivation. Teacher Qin, you control your strength so well. It hurts me and makes my body swell, but it doesn't affect my movement. Although my eyes are swollen, there's still a line left for me to see. I'm in awe. Qin Fangyang smiled faintly. I think there will be more and more opportunities for you to admire me. This is what a teacher should do. Zhou Xiaoduo's face turned bitter. The class burst into laughter. Qin Fangyang said faintly, not only Teacher Qin, but also the others. There will be many opportunities for you to admire them. Zhou Xiaoduo looked at the students who turned to look at him. Their eyes were filled with a strong desire to fight. In the warrior class, or any class above, as long as you're a martial artist, what you face every day is not only cultivation, but also battles. Zhou Xiaoduo, where you are now is the last place in the 9th class. It is also the worst place to cultivate. And this cultivation position is determined by one's cultivation level. Qin Fangyang said, There are sparring sessions every day, and there are rankings every week. Your seat will be where you are ranked. Sua Xiaoduo, can you fight your way up here? Qin Fangyang smiled and looked at Sua Xiaoduo. His eyes revealed infinite pressure. The 35 young students turned their heads at the same time and looked at Sua Xiaoduo. Their eyes were full of determination, but there was no malice or hostility. Sua Xiaoduo was stunned for a moment. Then, he smiled and said, if you need, I can take a look at your fortune and give you some pointers. We can talk about life, dreams, future, and love. Fighting is really too much of a killjoy. Beside him, the little fatty who had just spoken turned his head to look at him. His eyes were filled with sympathy as he said, hello, Brother Zhua. Welcome to replace me as the punching bag of the class. Sua Xiaoduo only realized then. This little fatty was actually not fat at all. The reason why he looked fat was because his whole body was swollen from being beaten up. So cruel. Sua Xiaoduo was shocked. In front of him, in the first row, the first place in the class, a thin boy turned his head and looked at Sua Xiaoduo. He said lightly, isn't this what you want? Sua Xiaoduo was stunned. Then, a girl who was second only to the boy in front of him smiled coldly and said faintly, someone who entered this class this semester had the same plan as you. As soon as he entered the class, he racked his brains to put on a show with the intention of angering everyone in the class. He wanted to use the hostility of the whole class to gain more sparring opportunities and improve his cultivation and combat experience. The girl smiled. That's the plot of the main character in a novel. Sua Xiaoduo. Was my intention so obvious? Did they see through it at the beginning? How can I show off and slap their faces? I've clearly set up the plot according to the novel. What a failure. So embarrassing. Hearing the girl's words, the little fatty sitting on the left side of Sua Xiaoduo lowered his head deeply. Obviously, someone the girl was talking about was this guy. The girl who spoke was neither fat nor thin, neither tall nor short, neither handsome nor ugly. However, her entire body was overflowing with an extremely sharp aura. She was full of heroic spirit and had a valiant bearing. She paused for a moment before continuing, the someone I'm talking about is the one sitting next to you. He's number 35, Li Chenglong. Just like you, he came in and courted death. He. We didn't betray his trust, and we didn't neglect his needs. We did our best to fulfill his wish. That's why he's always been in the position of number 35, and he'll fulfill his wish several times a day. And your words and actions just now have successfully attracted our attention. You're our new target. The little fatty Li Chenglong looked sullen. He raised his head and his lips squirmed twice. Finally, he lowered his head in embarrassment. At the same time, the entire class burst into low laughter. The girl raised her head and said to Sua Xiaoduo, classmate Sua Xiaoduo, my name is Wan Lixiu. You need to remember me because you will hate me for a long time. After all, it was after my words that the nightmare began. She smiled softly and said, although I won't believe what you said about the path of heaven's secret, I still don't care about it. But that doesn't stop me from paying more attention to you in the future. Are you looking forward to it? Wan Lixiu sat down before she finished speaking. The boy sitting on the left side of Wan Lixiu didn't stand up. He just tilted his head and said, classmate Sua Xiaoduo, my name is Long Yusheng. However, you don't need to remember because you probably won't have the chance to fight with me. I will jump to the martial arts class in 2 months at most. With your strength, it is impossible for you to rise to the level of challenging me in 2 months. A cold smile appeared on his handsome face as he said, however, you don't have to be disappointed. Because I'm different from Wan Lixiu, I believe that you know how to read fortunes. Therefore, I'll look for you every day and take care of your interests. However, if you can't read correctly and make a mistake, I'll spar with you and give you pointers just like Teacher Qin. As for the others, see if they are willing to give you the opportunity to step on them. It will depend on their own luck. Today's sparring session will begin in an hour. Long Yusheng said proudly, Zhuo Xiaoduo, today will be very unforgettable for you. I sincerely agree with Wan Lixio's words. Zhuo Xiaoduo didn't feel offended at all. He said calmly, I am looking forward to the competition, but I don't believe in nightmares. It won't happen, it won't happen. Long Yusheng smiled and turned his head. Zhuo Xiaoduo took a light breath and began to feel dignified. The current situation was almost completely different from his original plan. Although he had achieved his original goal, it wasn't in the way he had imagined. In the novel, the protagonist went to a place to attract hatred. The students all held a hostile attitude and attacked him together. This was exactly what the protagonist wanted. The story of helping the protagonist cultivate didn't happen. None of the students I saw were stupid. Everyone's IQ was on the line. Alas, how could there be mediocre people among the students who were able to enter the martial arts class with better qualifications than ordinary people? Sure enough, the things in novels can't be trusted. Zhuo Xiaoduo muttered in his heart. After thinking about it, he felt that he had made a fool of himself in front of everyone. Although he had achieved his goal of being besieged by the whole class, it seemed that it didn't follow his original plan. Because this was the rule of survival of the fittest. As for the students' malice towards him, there was almost no one. At most, my personality is a little annoying. Zhuo Xiaoduo thought to himself, but the personality I've shown should be even more annoying. With a swollen face, he muttered, I'm relieved that you hate me. I'm really afraid of being pestered by female students. As martial artists, we should bravely climb to the peak of martial arts. How can we have time to flirt with girls or be flirted with by girls? The ears of the female students in front of him twitched, and they all looked at him with disdain. Someone whispered, how thick-skinned. Sigh. I hesitated for a long time before writing this chapter. After writing it, I read it many times. Until now, I'm still hesitating. I really want to continue acting cool and slapping faces. I don't need to use my brain to write that way. Once this chapter is published, it will create 10 times more difficulty for me. I really want to delete it now. Publish it, publish it. If I can't write with a high IQ in the future, I'll think about it again. Oh, I'll listen in before the Spring Festival. After the Spring Festival, don't guess. If someone doubts me, I'll explain. The technical school that my wife contacted. Ahem, don't ask around. Chapter 15. Then, Qin Fangyang started to release his power and activated the Astral Souls array above the classroom. He shouted, calm your mind and start cultivating. The array flickered, and the stone of astral souls on it suddenly lit up. All the students in the class sat upright with their legs crossed and entered a state of cultivation. At this moment, Zhuo Xiaoduo, who was sitting at the back, clearly felt the difference between the seats. The power of the astral souls shrouded the top of the class. However, the classroom was too big. The first seat that was shrouded was Long Yusheng's first seat. Then, Wan Lixio's second seat was shrouded by the light of the astral souls. Then, the third and fourth lights lit up one after another. However, the brightness was different and gradually weakened. When it reached Zhuo Xiaoduo and Li Chenglong's seats, the brightness of the starlight was almost gone. There was only a faint sense of light left. Li Chenglong was speechless. He sighed, just this little bit of light. And I still have to pay the same tuition fee. I'm really ashamed of the talent that the God of creation gave me. Tuition fee. Zhuo Xiaoduo was shocked. Tuition fee. Shouldn't it be free for a genius like me? Li Chenglong muttered as he reached into his pocket and took out 2 shining stones of astral souls. He held them in his palms, closed his eyes, and focused on cultivating. As he activated the stones of astral souls in his hands, the light from the stone of astral souls merged with the light from the astral souls array. Instantly, some of the light was pulled over and merged into Li Chenglong's astral soul's array. It merged into his body, and the atmosphere of his cultivation improved visibly. Fuck, Wu Qing. I didn't know you could do this. What a show-off. Have you thought about how I, who is last in the class, feel? Seeing this, Zhuo Xiaoduo was dumbfounded. A thought flashed through his mind. He looked around and saw that many people in the class were holding a few astral soul stones in their hands. They were using the energy from the astral soul's stones to increase their cultivation efficiency in conjunction with the astral soul's formation. In the center of the array, Qin Fangyang was sitting with his eyes closed. Waves of astral power spread out from his body, triggering the power of the array to spread out gradually. Of course, there were also those who did not have a stone of astral souls, so their cultivation environment was visibly lagging behind others. However, there was nothing they could do about it. Whether or not they had the stone of astral souls represented the wealth of each student's family. Cultivation was a test of one's financial resources. Even if you were extremely talented and didn't have the corresponding resources to assist you, even if you were able to take the first place at the beginning of the school term, there was a high probability that others would catch up and surpass you. Just as Fatty Li Chenglong had said, everyone paid the same tuition fees. Why would you be able to occupy a good position if you were talented? If you wanted a good position, you had to defeat everyone. Whether one had a strong foundation or not, the gap between the rich and the poor in the world, and all kinds of helplessness, were all exposed at this moment. Zhuo Xiaoduo quickly came back to his senses. He didn't dare to let his imagination run wild anymore. He closed his eyes and concentrated on his cultivation, mobilizing the spiritual energy in his body with all his might to cultivate. As soon as he started cultivating, Zhuo Xiaoduo immediately felt the astral souls in his body move fiercely. The flame of astral souls that had been dormant in his body suddenly rose from his dantian, emitting countless tongues of flame that splashed in different directions, receiving the energy from the astral souls in the air and entering his body. At the same time, there was a cooling sensation between his eyebrows. Countless amounts of energy from the astral souls were released from the astral souls formation in the classroom, entering Zhuo Xiaoduo's meridians like moths to a flame. As the energy from the astral souls converged and poured into his body, the cooling sensation grew stronger and stronger, gradually spreading down his meridians in a solid state. Wherever the cooling sensation passed, Zhuo Xiaoduo could clearly feel that his meridians were changing bit by bit, becoming more flexible, smoother, and smoother, allowing the cooling sensation to flow down more smoothly. He still couldn't see inside his body, so he could only rely on his senses. But it was already a feeling. This feels so good. The space between his eyebrows rose up and down. The entire process was extremely slow, but wherever it passed, the changes were real and the benefits were enormous. The energy from the astral souls in his dantian was moving up, while the cooling sensation between his eyebrows was splitting into two, one circling around his head while the other circled down. It was as if three armies had set off from different places and were about to converge at a certain place. Zhuo Xiaoduo was surprised. This didn't happen when he was cultivating previously. He was absorbing the energy from his dantian like other people. But now, how did it become like this? What Zhuo Xiaoduo didn't know was that a small vortex was gradually forming above his head. As it spun, it was absorbing the light from the astral souls and pouring it towards him. The moment the vortex was formed, the cooling sensation increased in speed. The classroom was silent. Qin Fangyang channeled the energy from the astral souls in his body while paying attention to the balance of each side. He deliberately tilted the energy from the astral souls towards those areas that weren't good. After all, they were just young martial warriors. Even if they were talented, they were limited by their experience. Their ability to absorb the energy from the astral souls was only so the efficiency was relatively low. They still needed the help of a mentor to increase the efficiency. When they reached the level of martial master, they wouldn't need a mentor to guide the astral soul's formation anymore. He had been in this line of work for more than 20 years, so he was already extremely familiar with it. He didn't need to put in much effort. As he channeled the energy from the astral souls, he diverted some of his attention to observe the situation of the students in the class. At this moment, at the core of the astral souls formation, there were 3 vortexes that stood out the most. The spirit vortexes were a special function of the astral souls formation. Within a certain area, the formation could clearly see the cultivation aura of each student, making it convenient for the teacher to teach according to the student's aptitude. These 3 vortexes belonged to Long Yusheng, who was ranked first, Wan Lixio, who was ranked second, and Yu Moyan, who was ranked third. These 3 youths were the students that Qin Fangyang was most satisfied with. Even after observing Qin Fangyang's teaching for so many years, the aptitude of these 3 youths was still considered to be above average. If there were no accidents, these 3 students would break through to the martial master realm within a few months and reach a higher level. In view of this, it was reasonable for Qin Fangyang to pay special attention to these 3 students. Moreover, these 3 names had already been recorded by the higher-ups of Second High. The other meaning of the record was that once these 3 youths broke through to the level of martial master, they would become the seeds of Second High. Qin Fangyang focused his attention and saw that the astral souls' vortexes above their heads had already begun to take shape. Moreover, they were abnormally stable. The surface of their bodies and faces were also beginning to flicker with a lustrous light. This was the perfect manifestation of the astral souls' vortexes circulating in the meridians. Not bad, not bad. Qin Fangyang nodded his head in satisfaction. Then, he shifted his gaze to the other students in the class. He looked around and vaguely felt that the atmosphere was not right. It was different from before. But what was different? Qin Fangyang looked around again but did not find anything out of the ordinary. However, the feeling that something was not right did not go away. Instead, it became stronger and stronger. When he took a closer look, his eyes suddenly widened in shock. As far as Qin Fangyang could see, at the back of the classroom, at the 2 most inconspicuous seats, there was a dazzling light of the astral souls' vortexes. Its brightness was almost greater than that of the 3 seed students at the front. Qin Fangyang focused his attention and looked carefully. He saw that above the astral souls' vortexes, there was a vortex that was slowly rotating, attracting the astral souls' vortexes. And this astral souls' vortexes was even bigger than the number 1 Long Yusheng's. Below it, a young man was sitting cross-legged with his eyes closed. Hiss. Zhou Xiaoduo, it's him. This fraud. Qin Fangyang was extremely shocked. He was so shocked that his inner qi almost went out of control. The strange astral souls' vortexes were actually Zhou Xiaoduo's cultivation vortexes. How was this possible? If he was a prodigy, Qin Fangyang would not be so shocked. However, it was abnormal for a guy who had repeated 5 years to have such a phenomenon. It can't be. Qin Fangyang looked carefully. If he had such talent, he would be a genius. How could he have repeated 5 years? Qin Fangyang was surprised and immediately focused his attention on Zhou Xiaoduo. He saw countless astral souls' vortexes pouring into his body like rivers flowing into the sea. However, when the astral souls' vortexes entered his body, it was like a clay ox entering the sea. There was no other reaction. This result surprised Qin Fangyang and made him even more puzzled. All the students who were cultivating would have their skin exposed to the air glowing faintly. This was more or less a natural reaction when the astral souls' vortexes entered one's body. However, Zhou Xiaoduo. The spiritual energy vortexes above his head were obviously bigger than everyone else's. Even though he was in the worst position and did not have the stone of astral souls to help him cultivate, he was the one who absorbed the most astral souls' vortexes. But why was there no fluorescence on his skin? What kind of explanation was this? Could it be that this guy directly ate the astral souls' vortexes? Without going through his meridians? Directly digested into his stomach? Qin Fangyang was puzzled. But if he could absorb it like this, why did he repeat a year? The reason why he repeated a year couldn't be because he had diarrhea again, right? Qin Fangyang was confused. Wolf, wolf, please recommend me. Chapter 16. On the other side, Zhuo Xiaoduo closed his eyes and focused on activating the flame of astral souls. He activated the power of astral souls and absorbed the energy as though he was thirsty. He had already entered a state of oblivion. At this moment, the coolness that was traveling down from his forehead stopped abruptly when it reached his chest. The other coolness entered his head and continued to move slowly along the meridians in his head. Everywhere it passed, it caused Zhuo Xiaoduo's mind to become clearer and clearer, and he couldn't help but have the misconception that he'd become much smarter. The coolness circled around his head 3 times before it went down through the meridians in his neck. It then split into 2 and went into his left and right shoulders. It went down his left and right arms until it reached his fingertips. It circled around all the meridians along the way before it went against the flow and flowed back. When it returned to his shoulders, the 2 paths sank at the same time and moved closer to each other. The coolness that was going down merged together and continued to move downward. Correspondingly, the power of astral souls in his dantian suddenly accelerated and went against the flow to meet the coolness. The coolness that was mixed with the power of astral souls from the top and the violent spiritual energy that was activated by the flame of astral souls from the bottom were in Zhuo Xiaoduo's meridians. They were like dry firewood that had been set ablaze. The moment they met, they became entangled with each other. The 2 types of auras that had different paths and attributes suddenly converged. It caused Zhuo Xiaoduo, who had already entered a state of oblivion, to tremble. His body started to twist violently as if he was having a spasm. White steam rose from his body. Immediately, his internal organs started to vibrate. After a while, Zhuo Xiaoduo let out a muffled groan. 2 streams of blood instantly flowed down from his nostrils. At the same time, the power of the astral soul's formation seemed to have been summoned. It suddenly rotated and poured most of its power into Zhuo Xiaoduo. An even more tyrannical force surged into Zhuo Xiaoduo's body. As the power of the astral soul's formation increased, the 2 forces in Zhuo Xiaoduo's body grew stronger and stronger. When the 2 forces merged into one, they surged through the meridians in his body. Finally, the cool force gradually shrank and attached itself to the fire of the astral souls, returning to his dantian with it. At this point, the cultivation process came to an end. Zhuo Xiaoduo, who had recovered from his meditation, took a deep breath and slowly opened his eyes. He felt that his mind was clear. His entire being exuded a kind of indescribable vigor from the inside out. Comfortable. Zhuo Xiaoduo murmured. At this moment, the rest of the students were still in a state of cultivation and had no idea what had just happened. Only Qin Fangyang, who was on the podium, stared at Zhuo Xiaoduo for a moment and then closed his eyes again. His expression was calm and tranquil. There was nothing unusual about him. However, in his heart, there was a stormy sea. He was inexplicably shocked. Only he, as the head teacher, had seen what had just happened. Zhuo Xiaoduo's spiritual vortex had exceeded the limits of everyone in the class. At its highest point, it had even reached the size of half the classroom. Although that extreme state only lasted for a short period of time, Qin Fangyang was sure that he had not seen wrongly. This was the truth. In other words, this Zhuo Xiaoduo was a cultivation genius with extraordinary talent. What he had shown in the first class today had far surpassed any of the students he had taught before. However, Qin Fangyang did not show any surprise. He remained silent and suppressed everything in his heart. Another 10 minutes passed. As Qin Fangyang finished cultivating, the array of astral souls was closed. The rest of the students finally woke up one after another, ending the routine cultivation for the afternoon. The students stood up from the futons one by one. They stretched their arms and legs and experienced the cultivation just now. As Wan Lixio stretched her arms and legs, she frowned and murmured, "Why do I feel that the effect of today's cultivation is a little?" She frowned and pondered. She wanted to say something but could not say it. Long Yusheng also frowned. His handsome face was slightly puzzled. Yes, the progress is a little slow. Beside him, the dark-skinned Yumoyan pursed his lips and did not say anything. He only nodded. Only the three of them felt a little strange. The others did not feel anything. Even when they heard the doubts of the three people, most of them were confused. The little fatty, Li Chenglong, scratched his head and said, "Is it? Why didn't I feel it? I felt that it was quite smooth." You definitely did not feel anything strange. You were the closest to Zhuo Xiaoduo. As the saying goes, one can enjoy the shade under a big tree. Even if you did not deliberately take care of him, the benefit of the astral soul's energy was still much better than usual. Qin Fangyang glanced at the little fatty and coughed. He stood up and said, "Let's go to the martial arts field. The ranking battle will begin tomorrow." Hearing this, all the students stood up with a bang. They were full of fighting spirit. And no less than 10 pairs of eyes looked at Zhuo Xiaoduo in unison. Zhuo Xiaoduo was a little confused. "Why are you looking at me? Do you want me to tell your fortune?" "Fortune telling? It's more like we want your life. We want to beat you up." Many people said in unison. "We'll satisfy your death-seeking wish." Ha ha ha. When Zhuo Xiaoduo and the rest arrived at the open-air martial arts field, all they could see was dragons and tigers leaping. It was bustling with noise and excitement. There were too many young people to take in. They were fighting against each other. At the center of the martial arts field, there was a platform that was more than 10 meters high. There were protrusions on all 4 sides, and on each of these protrusions, there were people standing. They were the teachers on duty. These 4 teachers were naturally paying attention to the students fighting in the martial arts field below. If there was a situation that might lead to death or injury, they would immediately intervene to stop it. And they were not the only ones in charge of watching. Every class's teacher would be watching the students in their class from the left side. Zhuo Xiaoduo had heard of this martial arts field for a long time, but this was the first time he had come here personally. Before this, he had never seen it before. Martial disciples were not qualified to enter the martial arts field. "Let's begin." Qin Fangyang held his hands in his sleeves, his expression was as indifferent as before. Unlike the other young instructors who were nervous, Qin Fangyang looked completely relaxed. This was probably the standard state of a wily old fox. Qin Fangyang's indifference was famous in the whole school. "Zhuo Xiaoduo." Long Yusheng looked at Zhuo Xiaoduo with a smile and said, "Didn't you boast about the magic of physiognomy? I'll be your first customer. Take a look and tell me if I'll win this time." Long Yusheng's opponent was Wan Lixiu, who was ranked 2nd. Wan Lixiu also looked over when she heard this. She said in the same joking tone, "Zhuo Xiaoduo, can I also be your customer? I also want to ask if I'll win this competition." Zhuo Xiaoduo was stunned, and then he ran the so-called physiognomy in his sea of consciousness. His eyes reflected on the faces of the 2 people, and he looked back and forth for a moment. "Of course, I can tell your fortune. But I have to say first, I can't tell you for free. You have to get something in return." Zhuo Xiaoduo looked and said, "This kind of question of winning or losing is really meaningless. But you are my first 2 customers. I can't just push the business away. As long as you are willing to pay, anything is negotiable." "Money?" Wan Lixiu suddenly became angry. "You still want money? Hey!" Long Yusheng waved his hand and stopped Wan Lixiu's outburst. He said in a low voice, "Just tell me how much you want. However, if you want to rely on a little bit of cleverness to amass wealth between us, I can only say that you have read too many novels." Long Yusheng's immature face showed a smile. "I also read novels. The so-called protagonist's plot. Don't think about using it on us." As he said that, he pointed at Zhuo Xiaoduo and then at Li Chenglong. The whole class burst into laughter. "We all read novels. Ho ho ho. Zhuo Xiaoduo helplessly spread his hands. You make me feel like I'm not the protagonist. Shu. The word protagonist caused a lot of boos. 35 middle fingers were raised neatly and pointed at Zhuo Xiaoduo. Among them was the little fatty Li Chenglong. Zhuo Xiaoduo looked at Li Chenglong. Little fatty, do you think so too? Li Chenglong, brother Zhuo, my dream of being the protagonist was shattered not long before you came. You should learn from the mistakes of others. Ha ha ha. Everyone burst into laughter. Zhuo Xiaoduo felt helpless and said straightforwardly, you say it. How much is what you say? You also said that we are classmates. How can I take money from my classmates? Just a little will do. By the way, there is one thing I have to say first. The biggest taboo of fortune-telling is to not accept payment. Fortune-telling is to look at life and death. If you give it away for free, it is equivalent to giving away your life for free. It is not good for you or others. Zhuo Xiaoduo's mouth was big, but he was secretly happy. Does that mean I can't take money? Don't you know that sand makes a tower? I am about to die of poverty. Even if it is 10 yuan per person, it is still a lot of money. Don't mention 10 yuan, I am willing to take even a penny. Long Yusheng thought for a moment and said carefully, I will randomly point at 10 people. Before they compete, you will evaluate the wins and losses of these 10 people. If all of them are correct, based on the number of people, you will be given 2 yuan per person. I will pay for this. If you make a mistake, not only will you not get a single yuan, but you will also be beaten up by the 10 of us. How about it? 2 yuan. Zhuo Xiaoduo exclaimed, this is 100 times less than I expected. You want to beat me up with only 2 yuan? Just tell me if you will do it or not. Long Yusheng smiled and said, actually, you should think like this, without these 2 yuan, you will still be beaten up. Do you think what I said in class was for nothing? Zhuo Xiaoduo looked indignant. I will do it. Words are like the wind. It is too late to regret. Student Long is the ceiling of our class. I think you will not go back on your words. Someone's face twitched, but he was really happy in his heart. 2 yuan per person. 10 people would be 20 yuan. 20 yuan. Wasn't he rich? Wasn't he rich? Zhuo Xiaoduo became serious and looked at the 10 people Long Yusheng pointed out. First, he asked for their names one by one, then asked for their opponents. Only then did he say seriously, Long Yusheng, you are bright and full of confidence, you will win. Wanli Xiu, you have bad luck on your face, you will lose for sure. Jia Junwen, you win. Wang Wan'er, you will lose. Xia Kuangguan, you will lose. Finally, Li Chenglong, you should stop fighting. You are unlucky today. You will definitely lose. On the other side. Qin Fangyang tilted his head slightly. He listened to the discussion and smiled faintly. Long Yusheng laughed and said, I am giving you points. But the others may not. Among the peoples Zhuo Xiaoduo pointed out who would win, 3 of them were challengers. They challenged their previous position. Generally speaking, the chances of winning were not very high. Zhuo Xiaoduo carefully looked at the faces of his opponents again and said, my words will be verified by time. You will know the result later. By the way, it is not the style of a gentleman to go back on his words. What if Long Yusheng didn't give him the money? He had to make sure that Long Yusheng wouldn't pay. Qin Fangyang ordered, stop fooling around. Start. With a bang, the whole class spread out. Zhuo Xiaoduo's opponent was the little fatty, Li Chenglong. On the other side, with a loud and clear whistle, Long Yusheng and Wanli Xiu were already fighting. The moment they started fighting, it was a tyrannical battle. Li Chenglong stretched his neck and laughed, Zhuo Xiaoduo, although you are older than me. Yes, so I am stronger than you. That is not necessarily true. Li Chenglong snorted, you want to step on me on the first day. I can only say that you are thinking too much. The next one who will be defeated will be you. Zhuo Xiaoduo was about to reply when he felt a fierce wind blowing toward him. Before Li Chenglong finished his last sentence, he had already taken the opportunity to attack. A whip kick swept toward him like an iron rod. Sneak attack. Damn, he actually used this move. Zhuo Xiaoduo saw his opponent coming at him aggressively. He shouted strangely and did not show any weakness. He turned sideways and used his completely honed right leg to meet the attack head-on. The two legs collided with each other in the air with a loud bang, producing a sound similar to that of iron colliding with each other. Zhuo Xiaoduo only felt a pain in his right leg, followed by a slight numbness. It was fine after a little movement. However, Li Chenglong, who was on the opposite side, screamed. He felt as if his calf had hit a steel bar. A piercing pain hit him, and he staggered back 7 or 8 steps. His face changed. Why is your leg so hard? Zhuo Xiaoduo shook his right leg proudly. Is it hard? It is harder in other parts of my body. These 2 chapters have a lot of introduction, so the word count is more than 1,000. Is it enough? So please recommend me. He stretched out his hand confidently. Give me the recommendation ticket. Chapter 17. Li Chenglong supported himself with one hand and leaped up. Do you think you've won? Just as he leaped up, Zhuo Xiaoduo was already in front of him. He swung his right leg and charged forward, aiming a kick at Yi Futian's chest. No, what I'm counting is that you've lost. You've been utterly defeated. With a boom, Li Chenglong's body slid out from the ground like he was on a slide. His face was flushed red. Qin Fangyang suddenly appeared in front of Zhuo Xiaoduo. The winner has been decided. Zhuo Xiaoduo wins. At this moment, he looked at Zhuo Xiaoduo with a strange look in his eyes. This student who had just joined from the martial disciple class was very unusual. Defeating Li Chenglong in the first battle was not out of Qin Fangyang's expectations. After all, if it wasn't for his cultivation, Hu Ruoyun wouldn't have allowed him to join the class. However, in the short battle just now, Zhuo Xiaoduo's battle awareness had been revealed. It was enough to surprise Qin Fangyang. Normally, a warrior who had just finished the martial disciple class would have almost zero battle experience. This was basic knowledge. Ordinary martial disciples were not allowed to fight. This was common knowledge even in big clans and big sections. However, this common knowledge did not apply to Zhuo Xiaoduo. He faced Li Chenglong's sneak attack as soon as he came up. Although he pretended to cry out in surprise, his response was not sloppy at all. It was obvious that he was prepared. The battle that followed was even more one-sided. Before Li Chenglong could stand up, Zhuo Xiaoduo had already arrived in front of him and attacked. His attack hit Li Chenglong's empty spot. He turned a blind eye to Li Chenglong's defense. It was obvious that he had judged his opponent's possible response after his attack, which was why he was able to succeed in one hit. This kind of battle awareness was not something a newbie could do. How could Qin Fangyang not be surprised? Qin Fangyang looked at the other battles in the field, pondering in his heart, but his face remained expressionless. However, after a short while, all the students who were fighting each other had a clear winner. Long Yusheng walked over arrogantly with a bruise under his left eye. He laughed and said, Zhuo Xiaoduo, I've won. I've delivered my share. Behind him, Wanli Xiu coldly snorted. But the others may not be able to do as you wish. Long Yusheng smiled and began to call out names. Jia Junwen, Wang Waner, Xia Kuangwen. The people whose names were called out were the ones that Zhuo Xiaoduo had commented on before. Jia Junwen, I won. Wang Waner didn't say anything. Xia Kuangwen snorted coldly. An excited voice said, I won. The owner of this voice was Wang Zhinshan. This was a brother who had failed to reach the 18th place several times before. This time, it was as if he had the help of God, and he defeated his opponent in one fell swoop. And he was one of the people that Zhuo Xiaoduo had said would win. After comparing the 10 people's comments, Long Yusheng was stunned. Wanli Xiu was also stunned. Everyone else was also stunned. Even the homeroom teacher, Qin Fangyang, was stunned. Because the results of the comments were all correct. Not a single one was wrong. 36 pairs of eyes looked at Zhuo Xiaoduo in unison. Zhuo Xiaoduo had a smug look on his face. I've already told you guys that I'm the only successor of the heavenly secret path. I'm a straightforward person, and my words are always accurate. Stop. Long Yusheng had a headache. You don't have to mention the heavenly secret path. I won't believe it even if you beat me to death. But you have some tricks up your sleeve. Long Yusheng was only 14 or 15 years old. At this moment, he had a puzzled look on his face, and he actually looked like a little adult. Long Yusheng was not the only one who was stunned. Everyone in the class was stunned. Everything was correct. Was this real martial arts? Was this really the inheritance of the heavenly secret path? However, looking at Zhuo Xiaoduo's smug face, everyone was speechless. He had calculated everything correctly. So what if you're not speechless? Qin Fangyang sighed softly and shook his head. This class of students was still young and inexperienced. They had been fooled by such a little trick. That's right. This group of children was said to be talented and had good cultivation. But in the end, they were just a group of 13 to 16 years old kids. They were a few years younger than Zhuo Xiaoduo. Zhuo Xiaoduo's comments. Well, even if it was a comment, it was accurate. It was reasonable for him to be smug for a while. However, as the students' eyes gradually turned from surprise to amazement and even admiration, Qin Fangyang couldn't help but say, when warriors fight, the first thing they look at is their opponent's expression and aura to determine their cultivation strength and combat strength. The saying, know thyself and know thy enemy, and thou shalt be victorious in every battle, is not just empty talk. For people like you who have low cultivation strength and can't hide your strength, it's easy to tell who will win and who will lose. What's so difficult about that? After saying that, he couldn't help but sigh in his heart. This Zhuo Xiaoduo not only had far more combat experience than his peers, but his observation skills were also good. With just a glance, he could clearly see everyone's strength. This seemed to be possible. Well, it was better to observe more. Tisk. The students who had already expressed their admiration for Zhuo Xiaoduo's miraculous fortune-telling immediately changed their attitudes when they heard Teacher Qin expose the mystery. They all rolled their eyes and thought that this guy really had some ability, but in the end. Hee. Long Yusheng, Wanli Xiu, and Yu Moyan looked at each other but didn't say anything. Little fatty Li Chenglong, who was still ranked last, also narrowed his eyes and looked at Zhuo Xiaoduo thoughtfully. Long Yusheng took out 20 star yuan without hesitation and said, here you go. No matter what method you use to win the bet, it's your ability. If you agree to bet, you must accept your loss. This time, you win. Zhuo Xiaoduo didn't hold back at all. He took the money with a whoosh and a smile on his face. Thank you, boss. Boss, you're so generous. Boss, come often. Then, with a swoosh, he stuffed the money into his trouser pocket at lightning speed. Long Yusheng's hand stopped in midair, and he was once again stunned. We're all classmates. You don't even need to be courteous. If you said you didn't need it, I could have just taken it back. Let's just treat it as a joke. This 20 star yuan is my pocket money for this week. If someone who was familiar with Zhuo Xiaoduo was here, they would definitely say, you're thinking too much. Courteous? Zhuo Xiaoduo had never been courteous when it came to money. After a long time, Long Yusheng raised his hand and scratched his head. He was still a little confused. Wan Lixiu blinked and suddenly said, Zhuo Xiaoduo, if we have to go on missions in the future, I can team up with you. Yu Moyan nodded calmly and said, "Me too." Long Yushin coughed and said, "Brother Xiao Duo and I are friends through gambling. I've even paid for it." She actually called him brother. The other classmates also opened their mouths, including little fatty Li Chenglong. They all expressed their warm welcome to Zhuo Xiaoduo. Although a certain someone's physiognomy was exposed by teacher Qin, his strength was also proven. It was obvious that another big shot in the class was about to rise. It was necessary to build a good relationship with him. Moreover, Zhuo Xiaoduo's observation skills were a necessary talent in any team. Qin Fangyang saw it and remembered it in his heart. Well, there were a total of 13 people who spoke. They were quite smart and could even be considered smart. They could almost determine the value of the classmates around them at the first moment. It was a welcome to the strong and talented. These 13 people were very smart. Even if they were in a dangerous situation in the future, they could use all the resources around them to get through it. At least their ability to protect themselves was stronger. As for the others, Qin Fangyang looked at the other 22 people who were either indifferent or too embarrassed to speak. He couldn't help but sigh. In the future, when they reached the martial master realm or higher and needed to go on missions, it was necessary to remind these children's teachers and parents not to go on missions if possible. Even if they changed careers and became ordinary people, they would have a better future than continuing to be a martial artist. Otherwise, they could easily lose their lives. What kind of development would a person who turned a blind eye to other people's abilities and strengths develop? Was life more important than face to those who couldn't lower their faces to make friends with the strong and the talented? Although this was a normal training ground, who would save you if you didn't make friends under normal circumstances? Let's continue. The winner will start sprinting to a higher position. Qin Fangyang ordered coldly. At the same time, in another realm, Zhuo Xiaonian finished her training for the day. Wearing a snow-white training suit, she went to her office. "Master, does anyone else know the time and place of my breakthrough?" Zhuo Xiaonian asked. Opposite Zhuo Xiaonian was a beautiful woman in a palace dress who was also wearing a snow-white robe. Just by sitting there, she was like a snow lotus on an ice mountain, untainted by even a speck of dust. She didn't look old, but this kind of strong person's age couldn't be measured by her appearance. Cold and noble, she couldn't be looked at directly. The beautiful woman opposite her heard Zhuo Xiaonian's question and looked back indifferently. She said, "There are only 3 people in this world, you, me, and your junior sister." Zhuo Xiaonian frowned. "But I suspect that the news has been leaked." The woman in the palace dress frowned, and a sharp light shot out from her eyes. "What happened?" Zhuo Xiaonian took a deep breath and said, "Someone already knows that it's the star weapon gold crystal, and the timing matches." "Who?" Zhuo Xiaonian didn't say anything. The woman in the palace dress, Mu Yanyan, stood up. Her slender figure was at least 1.75 meters tall. She narrowed her eyes and looked at Zhuo Xiaonian. "You can't say." "Yes, I can't say. But the news is confirmed, and there's no doubt about it," Zhuo Xiaonian said. Mu Yanyan didn't pursue the matter. She was familiar with her disciple's character. Since she couldn't say it, it was useless even if she was beaten to death. With the same reason, the news had really been leaked. There was no doubt about it. She slowly paced 2 steps and said softly, "It seems that the news has really been leaked." Zhuo Xiaonian didn't say anything. Mu Yanyan didn't hesitate. She picked up her phone and quickly dialed a number. 2 minutes. "Come to my office. Recommendation ticket."